The Blast from Our Past Network.
Lock your doors, close your windows, turn out your lights, for chills and thrills await you. It's time for Podcasting After Dark with your hosts, Corey Stevenson and Zak Schaefer. Stay with a friend, say your prayers as grisly ghouls close in to seal your doom. Tonight's episode, Ladyhawke, starring Matthew Broderick, Rutger Hauer, and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to Podcasting After Dark. This is a Hawk Tuah girl talking about Ladyhawke Tuah.
You got a Hawk Tuah on that thing, and then you got to go buy my Bitcoin.
I came out of my Bitcoin hiding to do this episode of Ladyhawke Tuah. Just kidding.
I do love that you brought her up because I do find her story very amusing recently.
Hey,
so.
You know what? It's a pop culture thing. What do you call it? You know, from the woman on Montel, Catch Me Outside or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Not Montel or Dr. Phil.
That was Maury Povich or something like that. Or no, it was Dr. Phil. It was Dr. Phil. Catch Me Outside was Dr. Phil. And now it seems like nowadays the trajectory of an influencer who becomes famous from, like a meme, like not actually from anything talented, but they become famous from like a meme. They have two paths that they can walk. They'll both paths always start with starting a podcast. Then the paths deviate because you do one of two things. And it's so funny because someone actually made a tweet about this like years before Hawk Tuah Girl did her meme thing. But anyways, you have two paths ahead of you then. You become a right-wing influencer, or you scam a bunch of people out of their money with a Bitcoin, like fluff and dump or whatever the fuck they call it, and then get the fuck out of Dodge. So she literally did the only one of two things that any of these people ever fucking do. Because it's all about the grift, baby.
And kind of fitting with tonight's pick, because the villains in this film are grifters as well in their own way, if you think about it. But we'll get to that in a moment, because tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the 40th anniversary of Ladyhawke. Or I'll roll that back and say we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Ladyhawke with a Patreon-produced pick. So Robert Ortiz is a Patreon member for Podcasting After Dark. Go to patreon.com/podcasting after dark to join today. And when you're a highest tier Patreon member, you get to choose the movie that we're going to break down. And we are breaking down, like I said, 1985's Ladyhawke this evening, this day, depending on when you're listening to this. This afternoon, if you will. So, but before we get into the breakdown and all the yada, 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 ding, dong, wada, wada, bing, bong, I am Zak Schaefer, the tiniest of tees. And yeah, I still can wear tiny tees. I still do. They still fit really well. And joining me as always, my beautiful, bodacious co-host, Corey Sleazy C. Stevenson. What's going on, brother, after all this long-windedness of myself?
Well, I can't wear tiny tees because I have moobs. And if you listen to our review of The Onion last week, I since I'm part Irish, I also have giant nipples as well.
Apparently. Yep. Can unsee that. Unhear that. I guess I can unhear that.
Exactly. And real quick, I do want to add that Robert Ortiz is also a published poet. So go over to Amazon.com. Amadon. Where'd that come from? And go over to Amazon.com. Check out Robert Ortiz. Look him up. And he's got some awesome books. And I'll have a link in the show notes as well. But Zak, Ladyhawke. This one for me as a kid, this one was pretty big for me. I do talk about the fact that one of my first crushes as a kid was Linda Carter. I was like when I had a crush on her, I didn't know what that meant. I was so young that when I saw her, that it was more like just like something in my brain was firing off, but I didn't have the words to say what it was. By the time I saw Ladyhawke, which it came out when I was 7, I probably saw it in like 86 or 87, something like that. I think it was a staple of HBO or whatnot. And I think I saw it at my friend's house because I didn't have cable, me personally. The first time I saw this movie, I knew what love was because I was like in love with Michelle Pfeiffer. And like, I don't know how many times I watched this movie. It was probably a handful, but growing up, I was always like, it was almost like one of my first loves was Isabeau from Ladyhawke. And I just was like enthralled with her. And it was like, and I was like, still again, young enough to not really sort of know how to sort of express my feelings, but also old enough to know that it was a different kind of feeling than I had for like Linda Carter or something. Like this one was deeper. This one was more profound, And I'm watching the movie now because I haven't fucking seen it probably like in 35 years or something. And I'm watching it now and I'm like, okay, maybe it's because, Matthew Broderick is clearly supposed to be younger than her. And he was kind of the avatar for the audience. And, he's supposed to be like maybe around 16, 17, 18. And when you're, when you're around 8 or 9, that's still closer in age than say someone who's in their 20s or early 30s or something. So the fact that I feel like, he kind of having these feelings for Isabeau as well, kind of maybe I projected it onto him or vice versa. But anyways, this one was fucking meaningful to me as a kid. So fucking meaningful to me. Zach, what about you, buddy? You're like, wow, that was a lot.
Never saw this movie ever. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my God.
No,
really?
No, of course not.
Oh God.
No, it was a staple. It was a staple of HBO and Cinemax and all those movie channels back in the day. And, I hadn't seen it as well since my youth. I never saw it in the theater. I don't know. I think I know why I didn't see it in the theater because it's a romance. And when I was 9, I was playing with my toys and, reading comic books and watching wrestling on TV and like not wanting to see a romance movie. And this is a full-on romance movie. This is a romance movie with elements of fantasy, swordplay. But at the heart of it all, it is, it's a love story. And I think as an adult, it definitely has a much more powerful impact. But as a kid, I think I was like, I don't want to see that kissing movie and a love story. And Isabeau, Navarre, Isabeau, Navarre. Like, that didn't appeal to me as a 9-year-old kid. That being said, I think that's probably why I shied away from it for so long. And then when Robert said, I want you guys to break down Ladyhawke, I'm like, cool, let's do it. I had no clue some of the other elements to this movie that make it what it is. I had no clue as like I said, as a 9-year-old. As an adult, I go, whoa, this is pretty badass and much more impactful as a cinephile. So I think this is definitely, someone wrote on our Instagram, this is like a sleeper. I'm assuming they meant as in like a sleeper hit. And not a snooze fest, because it is 2 hours long. It is a long movie, but I think I feel it's definitely more of a sleeper hit, underrated, underappreciated in the pantheon of fantasy films.
Yeah, because it was a bomb when it came out in the theater, and apparently like Richard Donner, had been trying to like get this off the ground for years and years and years. I think like 4 or 5 years he was trying to get it going. So I don't know like why he was so into it. I don't know that, but I do know that Alan Ladd Jr. is the one that greenlit it, and for 20th Century Fox, and he is the guy who greenlit Star Wars: A New Hope. He's also the guy that went to bat for George Lucas when Star Wars: A New Hope, at the time being called The Star Wars, was going grossly over budget, and everything. He's the guy that went to bat. He's pretty much the reason we have Star Wars is because of Alan Ladd Jr. But it is interesting that Richard Donner just had, I don't know why, and the Blu-ray has nothing on it, it only has a trailer, so there's no documentary or making of, and I'm really surprised that like Arrow or somebody hasn't like remastered this or whatever, but who knows, we'll see. It's interesting. Did you notice, do you have the Blu-ray or did you watch it on streaming?
I watched it on streaming, but but continue.
Okay. I don't know, did you notice that, like, it's like in one of the scenes is early on when sort of you first see Navarre as the wolf, and they're in this like little hovel type of thing, and he first meets Isabeau. Like halfway through the scene, the color correction changes, and then it changes again after it's over. And I just didn't know if it was my Blu-ray or if it was the streaming, but it clearly needs to be like reprocessed, like redone, from the masters, and remastered from the negatives is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, but it is interesting that this film has no fanfare around it. And I think the reason it bombed is because of kind of what I said earlier. It's a romance movie, but it's painted as a fantasy action film. And while it does have those elements, at its core, like I said, it's way more lovey-dovey, kissy-kissy. So,
right.
And even the poster is very misleading, because it's like you don't even have Rutger Hauer on the poster. You got his sword. And the sword definitely plays into this film, but it's not about the sword. The sword's kind of like an afterthought, even though there's a really interesting moment at the end, which we'll discuss with said sword. And I'm curious to see if you picked up on it as well. But it's about the two of them, Matthew Broderick, up until this point, he hadn't done Ferris Bueller's Day Off yet. That came out in 1986, a year later, which is really interesting because his character is very much like a medieval version of Ferris Bueller.
It really is.
Like he's like talking, he's talking to God throughout this. However, I feel like God is the audience.
The audience, yeah, exactly. There are strong shades of Ferris Bueller in this. And, I'm thinking about what you're saying, like, as far as it bombing in the theater. Yeah, because, like, if this is a romance, and just, like, going back to 1985, what is, like, Joe Guy, normal dude, bringing his, girlfriend on a date, or the wife? Like, is girlfriend or wife going to want to see this type of thing, Is it, because it's not like your typical rom-com or something like that, but, and then, like little boys might not want to see it, or they go and see it and they're like, oh, I didn't really dig that because it's more, heavily, romantic versus action-packed. It does have action, but like you said, it is at its, core a romance movie. And I think, like, for me, I wonder if I wouldn't have liked it as a kid if for some reason Michelle Pfeiffer just didn't totally click, for me for whatever reason. Although it is funny because I'm watching it, now, and I'm like, I feel nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but maybe it's just because I'm dead inside and I'm 47 years old and we're living through a complete nightmare in the States right now.
That could be, but also too, and to round out the three main leads, Rutger Hauer is not a leading man necessarily. He's played a leading man in many roles, but he's a very quirky leading man. And I don't think there's, I could be wrong with this, but I can't think of any movie that he's done where he's the lead actor, the hero, not the villain, and the movie has been a success.
Right.
Blind Fury came out way towards the end of the 80s, early 90s. That was not a big hit. I believe that was also a bomb. He did a movie called A Breed Apart with Powers Booth and Kathleen Turner, which I highly recommend to everybody. Go check that out. Shout Factory released one, but knowing Shout Factory, they probably pulled it and didn't tell anybody.
And it goes for $100 on eBay now.
Yeah,
it's funny that you mentioned that because, like, when you said Rutger Hauer doesn't really play the leading man much, but again, I started Rolodexing through my head, and I'm like, that movie, he's a bad guy, or that movie, he's like a side person, and then, but the one thing I landed on was Blind Fury, because he's on the cover. Oh, what was it, Dead or Alive? Wanted, Dead or Alive?
Wanted, Dead or Alive, and I love that movie. I believe that came out in 86 or 87, but again, that movie, I believe, bombed as well.
Yeah.
He's one of those,
No, go ahead, finish.
No, I just think he's one of those guys that, does not appeal to a wider audience. I love him. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I love him.
Me too.
I think he's amazing. I really do. I will watch anything with him in it, but I don't think he appeals to a wide audience. Matthew Broderick does. However, with a bowl cut, maybe not so much.
And also too, Zach, like, I don't know where to insert this in the breakdown because in my notes in there somewhere, but I came to the realization it's also a weird movie in the fact that, Rutger Hauer and Michelle Pfeiffer, it's their story. They're the main characters, but
Yes.
you're following Matthew Broderick in this, who's technically not the main character, and it even gets called out halfway through the movie by, Imperialist or whatever his name is, the older guy, and he's like, you stumbled upon, this basically his crazy story, and now you're a part of it. And he basically even saying like, dude, we're not even the main characters of this story. So it kind of also makes the movie have this odd disconnect, I think, personally, watching it now, as far as like sort of story structure goes, because you're not with the main protagonist really that much. Like Rutger Hauer is not in this movie that much, which is interesting because Matthew Broderick is in it completely. He's in it 100% throughout the entire film. And it kind of reminds me of like when they made the first Hellboy movie and they had to make that one FBI agent guy that didn't exist in the comics.
Oh,
they had
yeah.
to make him, and no one liked him, but he was the audience. He's like, oh, we got to have the audience to bring you into this world. And I mean, I like Matthew Broderick's character, but I think we could have had us following Navarre instead and picking up, Matthew Broderick on the side. But again, it's a weird sort of format in the fact that you're not with the main characters of this movie for most of the movie.
Yeah, it doesn't follow the typical formula, which again might not appeal to a wider audience. However, on the cult level, it does, I think. I think people are like, oh, I love this movie because it's so different. Because, yeah, it doesn't always have the same two. They have that one moment, as the sun's rising and setting or whatever, where they are about to touch hands. That's the only time, and it's so special. I think that's overall maybe why it appeals to the cult audience, but not the wide audience. I'm just going to round out because we pretty much were talking about the cast already. You called out Imperius. He's played by Leo McKern, who's just a classic actor. He's been in everything from since the 60s and beyond. Before that, I think one of his bigger known roles is in the film A Man for All Seasons. And if you want to see a historical drama from the 60s that is, I think, fairly accurate, it's an amazing film. Highly recommend it. But yeah, Leo McKern's been around since the 50s doing a lot of different roles.
And he's pretty fucking great in this movie too.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, he definitely ranks up there with those classically trained British actors that with that really impactful voice. Really impactful voice. And, it's just very dramatic.
Yeah, drama.
Speaking of,
I'm acting. Talk about acting at an 11. The entire fucking movie is The Bishop.
Yes, John Wood. No relation to John Wood from, I believe, the Rolling Stones. Isn't that what his name is?
I think
John
so.
Wood?
Yeah.
People are like, no, it's not. His name's not John Wood. Anyways, he was in War Games. He played Falcon A.
Yeah, so he worked with Matthew Broderick a couple years prior with War Games, but it's funny because him and Matthew Broderick really don't have anything to do together in this movie.
No, they don't, and it's Ron Wood from the Rolling Stones.
Oh,
yes,
okay,
I know it's Ron, and it came to me. I didn't have to look it up on Wikipedia, even though I double-checked and fact-checked after I came up with it.
Zach, one of these days, I would like to meet the people that you are always battling with.
In my mind?
Yeah, in your mind. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many of them. The other, just to round out the major cast, Ken Hutchinson plays Marquette. He's an evil. He's he would be the stand-in for, Mayor of Nottingham from Robin Hood.
Yeah. That's what I was going to go as well. The funny thing is, his character was originally supposed to be played by Rutger Hauer, and Kurt Russell was originally supposed to play Navarre. I think Kurt Russell dropped out pretty close to when principal photography was going to start filming, so they just kind of shifted things around and brought in Ken Hutchison.
Oh, Hutchinson. He definitely looks like Alan Rickman to me a little bit, but if you look up his filmography, one film and role that stands out is Straw Dogs.
Yeah.
He's good, but I'm like, he doesn't really do it for me. I will say John Wood, Rolling Stones bassist, he is the embodiment of what is wrong with a lot of society today.
Well, yeah, the character, the bishop, yeah,
the
absolutely.
Character, not the actor.
But, man, I mean, but I will say that his acting is wild. Like, I feel like every joke that like a sitcom or a SNL sketch comedy would make about like a classically trained actor, they're all about him, dude, because like, I mean, even in the climax when he gets got, he's like, I'm gonna hold my eyes open for as long as possible and then I'm out, you know. It's like everything is just such, there's no subtlety to him like whatsoever in this movie. He is chewing the scenery up left and right,
without a doubt,
for better or worse.
Edward Camera is the guy who wrote this film, but there's a little bit of a controversy or kerfuffle, right, Corey?
Yeah, because the studio billed this movie as based on like actual folklore, Irish like folklore or Italian, something like that. But because of that, and it wasn't true, but because I think there's a thing for the Writers Guild, if the studio, if you base something off of something that's quote unquote like a real folklore, you don't get full creative, like you didn't create that fully. And so the fact that the studio touted this up and he's like, no, I made this up like out of my head completely. He actually had to sue the studio to get like the credit on there. Now it's interesting because, you know, like what he's done, you know, written before, he wrote the screenplay for Enemy Mine. That was a movie that I fucking loved and saw a ton as a kid as well. But then Michael Thomas came on. I think he probably did some passes on it. He worked on writing The Hunger. But the big one, Tom Mankiewicz, who wrote the frickin' screenplay for Diamonds Are Forever, The Man with the Golden Gun, Live and Let Die, you know, all these James Bond things. It's interesting because if you look, it's under the writing credits, he's listed for screenplay. But then if you click on his name on IMDb, Ladyhawke is on there, but it says consultant. So I'm thinking I think he just did maybe some you know, punch ups and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, he also, let's round out what other things he's worked on, because he wrote the screenplay for Superman 1 and 2 and
right.
Mother Jugs and Speed, one of my favorite movie titles. Just the title, Mother Jugs and Speed. I wonder who plays Jugs. And he directed Dragnet and Delirious. So two 80s movies. Yeah, so Tom Mankiewicz, definitely if he's a hired gun to come in and help, you know, fix it.
That's
good
one
man,
to pick.
Yeah, what good man to bring in, and he worked on Heart to Heart. So
okay, and it makes sense too because you know he worked on Superman 1 and 2, and Richard Donner directed those, so that makes sense that he would be like, oh, maybe he does dialogue. Maybe this guy comes in and does like great dialogue or something like that. Because I actually wrote down some really cool dialogue in this movie.
So did I. I was like, damn you, Robert, with making me write down the dialogue.
Excalibur!
I had to write down so much dialogue because it was all relevant to the plot. Yeah, and like you said, Richard Donner directed this. But really quickly, as we start to wrap up the cast and crew and whatnot, let's talk about the composer and, well, the composers or the people behind the music, the score. So it says in the film, the score is performed by the Philharmonia Orchestra, and it's produced by Alan Parsons and composed by Andrew Powell. So you might wonder who Alan Parsons is. Alan Parsons Project.
I am the eye in the sky. I'm looking at you. I can read your mind.
You know that was ripped off by Lady Antebellum, right?
No, I didn't know that.
So you know that song, it's a quarter birthday.
Oh,
need
yeah.
You to know,
oh, that is the same.
And I need you now. It's
You're
exact
right.
same song.
It is the same song. Yeah, you're right.
I don't know. I didn't look into it, but I don't know if they sued him or not, or if they sued Lady Antebellum.
Yeah.
But my God, like it is a full-on rip-off. And I don't mind because I like both songs.
So apparently Richard Donner, when he was over in Italy scouting locations for this movie, apparently he had, I think he was just like, we all have those albums that we just fall in love with for a certain period of time and listen to the hell out of. Yep. He was listening to the fuck out of the Alan Parsons Project, and then he was like, I couldn't separate the visuals, from it, so that's why we have Andrew Powell, who I think even before this had worked with Alan Parsons as an engineer or something, because like you said, Zach, Alan Parsons Project, I mean, he was just kind of like a sound engineer guy, right? And then he kind of turned his studio into like something. Isn't that like almost like a session band type of thing?
Yeah, I think so. Alan Parsons Project is phenomenal, by the way. And that song you're singing, Eye in the Sky, that whole album is amazing.
Yeah.
It's got that, what the Chicago Bulls used to use. I believe it's called Sirius. Like that instrumental as well. But anyways, yeah.
And I think, going back to our conversation about why this bombed, this score is fucking divisive. Like, people either hate it, or I think a very small contingent of cult people love it. But I think it was kind of ripped apart. And I mean, buddy, let's talk about it now. Like, I'm listening to it, and I love synthwave stuff. I love all this. Like, on paper, I would love this music. But for me, it always took me out of the scenes. It always took me out. And it almost had this feeling of, it felt like a proto Xena the Warrior Princess or Hercules type of score, because it felt small. It doesn't feel like a big sweeping score like I'm expecting, like something from like Excalibur or something. And now, sad thing is I can't even remember Excalibur's, but in my head I pictured having a big sweeping score. This one, it always felt small, and it always felt kind of wrong. But if I listened to it on its own, I might have liked it, but I didn't like it with the visuals. And by the way, I watched it with Myra, so she had her take on this as well. And she was like, this music is wild. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, and she's like, and not in a great way. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of feeling that too.
I agree with you 100%. That the one specific scene when Mouse is swimming underwater as he's getting ready to escape, and I'm like,
yes, I noted that one. It was insane.
I'm like, whoa, this is like disco synth going on right now. I don't hate this at all, but it's interesting for this kind of movie. Yeah. This has been done in other fantasy or like period pieces. I'm trying to think. I feel like I've seen some period piece films in the past that have used like modern music and it doesn't click. And I'm like, that doesn't work for this. But
I think you're thinking of A Knight's Tale in the 90s, because that had like, Slipknot or whatever. Like that was all like new metal and shit.
Probably,
but it was all like, supposed to be back in time. Yeah. Or it's, a period piece, but it has new music in it. But like, apparently this was the trend in the early 80s, was to give like sort of period pieces, like this modern synth music stuff. And, it makes you realize that like sometimes maybe trends, you shouldn't maybe follow them, because while it might have been in vogue in 85, I still think it contributed to it not doing well in the theater. I do not think this score holds up for this movie in, where we are now in 2025.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen Westerns where it's like super rocked up music and you're like, this is a Western. Like there should be banjo music right now playing, not like, like it doesn't mesh.
Yeah.
All that being said, I agree with you. I still dig the score. It is wild. It is interesting.
Yeah, because it's hard, because like I actually would like it if I was just listening to it like on its own, but I just didn't feel like it fit the movie and the tone. But on the flip side of that coin, the visual side of things, the cinematographer of this film,
some old dude,
of course he is Vito Storaro. And he was the cinematographer for fucking Apocalypse Now. Also Dick Tracy, and also The Last Emperor.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. These old guys working on these kind of more hip films, and Are they hired guns? Probably, Richard Donner is like, look, guys, he's a good director, no doubt, but he looks like he kind of seems like a kind of a grumpy dude based on the one behind the scenes thing I saw for Goonies, where the kids were annoying the hell out of him. Understandable that they would annoy him because they seemed very annoying, but yeah, he seems kind of like that, the old classic. I wouldn't call him John Frankenheimer, but that kind of vibe of like, I've been doing this for 60 years, don't tell me how to do my job kind of thing.
Yeah. Who was the guy that got called in to like save the island of Dr. Moreau?
Yeah, John Frankenheimer.
That's right. Yeah.
Who did a great job with Ronin? Ronin was
love that movie,
kick ass. So.
Yeah, that was one of the first DVDs I ever bought. That
Me
wasn't
too.
the first, but it was one of the first.
Smee also. Smee, yes, Smee.
Smee also. So, but like one final thing I'll say that because it just applies to the whole entire movie. The locations in this film are unbelievable, and the cinematographer did a great job capturing them because I do believe that this movie is absolutely stunning, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, definitely one of the pluses is the cinematography. It's beautifully shot and interestingly paced. This is gonna be a maybe a controversial breakdown for some, just like the score. And but at the end of the day, Ladyhawke Tuah is not the movie we're breaking down. It is in fact Ladyhawke. So without further ado, let's get to that groovy disco synthwave score set in Elizabethan times or even further back, and hawk to it.
Matthew Broderick, a pickpocket who thought that anything was better than prison. Little did he know what he'd escaped from wasn't half as strange or frightening as what he'd stumbled into.
I do not believe what I believe, Lord. These are magical, unexplainable matters, and I beg you not to make me a part of them.
The knight who had saved him wanted only two things: to free his lover and to take his revenge.
I have waited almost 2 years for a sign from God.
Sir, the truth is I talk to God all the time. And no offense, but he never mentioned you.
The pickpocket was the key to his plan. But would you send a thief to guard your treasure? He was the last one in the world to act like a hero. It just happened by itself. And he was drawn into a magical, romantic adventure. Matthew Broderick, Michelle Pfeiffer, Rutger Hauer, Ladyhawke.
Yeah, so the movie opens with 3 minutes of credits, that are overplayed over cool, lush, clouds and moon and sun and hawks and all that good stuff.
Hawk 2 is, it's beautiful. The font for the title card was great. I love that.
Very cool.
It was weird though, on my Blu-ray, the aspect ratio for the title card was different. So it actually had not only the black bars on the top and the bottom, but actually had them on the side. And then when the movie starts, it was weird. And then this like Warner Brothers archive release on Blu-ray is complete trash. Like somebody needs to fucking redo this.
Yeah, Warner Archive sucks. Those Blu-rays that they put out are trash. They are literally like a rip, like a DVD rip sometimes, because I have some archive videos or archive Blu-rays. I have archive Blu-rays, and I'm like, they just copied the DVD to a Blu-ray. It's the same thing.
Unfortunately,
trash. Unfortunately, so save your money on the Blu-ray. It's for free on YouTube, by the way. So
okay, there you go.
With a HD quality.
Okay, that's nice.
Anyways, after this shot of these amazing credits, you get an opening fade in on Philippe Gaston, aka Mouse. I'll be probably calling him Mouse throughout most of this, talking to himself as he's digging through a tunnel, slowly starting to make his way out of a sewer.
And it's weird. Right from the beginning, he says, "It's not unlike escaping mother's womb." And he goes, "God, what a memory." And I'm like, does he remember being born? Like, what a weird way to start this movie.
It's again, it's like a very Ferris Bueller kind of moment, you know?
It is. And the funny thing is, this comes before Ferris Bueller.
Right. But he's got that same vibe, that same sense of humor.
100%. Yeah.
Quick cut to guys getting hung. And there's like a series of 3 stories going on here. So there's Mouse breaking out of his jail cell in the sewers. You've got prisoners being hung in the courtyard of this castle. And then you've got the Bishop of Aquila here like conducting the church, doing mass, right? And then you cut back and forth several times, and Mouse is literally like pushing like a cork out of a bottle kind of thing, where he's coming out of this tunnel. It looks disgusting. It reminded me a little bit of Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, absolutely.
Cut back to Marquette. We're introduced to Marquette, who wants more prisoners to be hung.
Hey, we don't know why they're hanging prisoners like at a pace, you know. We don't know why, and it doesn't matter.
It's some sort of like Inquisition kind of crap.
Yeah.
And what's funny is Marquette says, give me 3 more, and then you cut to the guard in the prison saying 2 more to be hung, and I'm like, oh, did one get passed? Did they pass one along the way? And they're like, oh yeah, get him in there, just hang him too.
Of course.
Anyways, so the soldiers go to Philip Gaston's cell, and he's not there. And a prisoner in the cell, this is funny, prisoner in the cell starts like reciting a nursery rhyme. He says, "The mouse, he left our house. No mouse today, he's run away. To ease his pain, he's down the drain." And then you see at that point the grate like in the cell is open to the sewer.
And it's so small, though. It's like, how the hell did he get down there? It's like that episode of X-Files where that guy that kind of like...
Fluke Man.
Yeah.
Fluke Man. I love that Fluke Man.
We all did.
we all love the Fluke Man. And of course, the soldier says, it's impossible. No one could escape. And so, but as the soldier walks out, he says, basically, hang that guy.
Grab that guy.
The guy's like, no. I feel like it's an episode of Family Guy. No, wait, I'm not the one you want. Yeah. And of course, that's when Mouse utters the line, "Oh God, what a memory," just coming out of his mom's
womb.
Vag. Yes.
What the hell?
Cut to the Bishop of Aquila doing mass, and Marquette walks in to basically tell him what has happened. Cut back to Mouse falling into the sewer. Soldiers are searching everywhere for Mouse. Mouse is going through the tunnels, and he freaks out because he sees something flowing in the sewer. Looks like a giant head of an animal or a monster. He starts freaking out, and it turns out it's just a skull of a bull.
Yeah, I was like, why? This could have been cut. And here's the thing, Robert, I'm not going to say this movie's too long because I don't really know what I would cut from it. I don't necessarily think this movie needs to be an hour and a half. I think 2 hours is fine for this movie. But like, sometimes it's like, cut this, but give me a little bit, maybe more backstory on Mouse. Like, we never kind of find out like why the bishop has such a hard-on for killing Mouse. Now, it's kind of because...
I know why.
It's
he's attracted to him.
Probably. But like, I do like my historic epics, my fantasy epics. I do like them around 2 hours, and I'm fine with that. But like, this little scene was like, I didn't like this little scene. But later on, there's like other scenes I wish would have just been expounded upon. So, maybe just do a little bit of editing or something. But I don't have a problem with the actual runtime of this.
I do want to say something really quick, though, that just triggered in my mind, because I'm like, what other movies did I really dislike the score for, but it's a really good movie? Princess Bride has has a terrible score, and it's by your boy from Dire Straits. My
boy Sultan of Swing.
Mark Knopfler. Mark Knopfler did the score for that. Again, this is like you were talking about this craze of the 80s of getting like interesting scores. Musician, Dire Straits. It sounds like he did it he probably did it on a keyboard, the whole thing, but it's like keyboard horns, that it's so cheesy. Well, it really ruins the movie, in my opinion.
wasn't that a Tangerine Dream score?
It was a Tangerine Dream score, but also the guy from Yes, the lead singer of Yes, and I'm not going to look his name up, but he did the, for goodness sake, like that song or whatever.
Yeah.
So there was very heavy, and that felt more acceptable because it was way more monstrous. This is not this has obviously fantasy elements, but really it's just the fact that they can turn into a wolf and hawk. That's the only fantasy part of this.
Yeah, whereas like Legend, like the Tangerine Dream worked in Legend because it's very, the whole movie's very dreamlike and heavy fantasy,
And I think that one had two different scores. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not going to look it up right now.
Yeah, because there are multiple versions of Legend. The Arrow Blu-ray that I got, it has like both the director's cut and I've actually watched both of them because I was on this podcast called Why This Film with Emily Slade. I don't even think it's around anymore. I don't even think my episodes are up there anymore. But we covered on two separate episodes both versions of Legend, the director's cut and the theatrical release. And yeah, they're very different from one another.
Oh, okay, interesting. Well, yeah. So you're right about Tangerine Dream doing one score, and then Jerry Goldsmith did the other one. He did the director's cut.
Oh, he did the director's cut. So the theatrical cut was the Tangerine Dream. Interesting.
Yeah, which was way more fantastical. And, like Never Ending Story had that kind of vibe to it as well.
Yeah.
We already covered that in the opening, but still, the whole reason I'm bringing all this up is because we're about to get to that disco fantasy synth scene, because Marquette goes to tell the bishop that, Gaston has escaped, and Gaston has made his way up this tunnel that to the grate in the church, and he's sticking his fingers up in there. And initially a little girl says, "What are you doing down there?" And he's like, "Go away, go away." And then the Marquette just happens to step right on top of Mouse's fingers, causing him to fall back down into the sewer, and that cues Mouse swimming under the water in the sewer system to make his way through a hole in a underground
grate or something. Yeah.
Another hole, a bigger hole than the one he escaped from in prison, and to make his way out into the main moat of the castle.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like, you and I both noted this one score because it is weird, guys. It is so weird. And it kicks in like full force, like underwater. Like, me and Myra were both like, what is happening right now?
Again, I didn't hate it, but it was very like, what's going on?
It just doesn't fit the what we're seeing,
No. This fits though, because you cut back to Marquette and the bishop having a discussion outside of church, because that would be improper to do it in church. That would be sacrilegious. And Marquette says, that someone's escaped the dungeons, and the bishop says, "No one's ever escaped the dungeons. People have accepted this as historical fact." And Marquette says, "Well, the responsibility's mine." And Marquette says, "It would be a miracle if you managed to get through there." And the bishop says, "I believe in miracles. It's part of my job." Marquette says, "It's only one petty thief." The bishop says, "With a simple breeze, a single random spark can ignite fire as a rebellion." That sounds like a Star Wars line.
It does.
Marquette says,
the same thing.
Yeah. Marquette says, "Well, if he's out there, I'll find him, bishop." And then the bishop makes him kiss his ring, because that's what you do when you're a little bitch. And he goes on his way.
Now, again, so I get that the bishop and everybody want Mouse now, because no one's ever escaped. So that's it's a bad thing. They want to.
Now he's a big deal.
But I felt like there was still something about Mouse prior that they had a hard on to kill him. Or it was just he annoyed the guards, and the guard was like, but I wish they'd said in the dialogue, get that little annoying Mouse guy. He's always pissing me off. It seemed like they were intentionally going for him, and there was something about it, but I wish I knew what that was.
I agree, because there's really no backstory in the Mouse.
And nothing, we don't really, aside, obviously we know what happens to Navarre and Isabeau and everything, but like we
Isabeau.
really don't Isabeau, but we
Navarre.
really but we really don't know anything about Mouse prior to like when this movie starts. It's almost as if he didn't exist prior, you know?
It's true. But I do like this scene that happens next, because as the Marquette and his men ride out of the castle, you cut to Mouse still by the water, and there's a little bit of disjointedness timeline-wise in this film as well, because I'm like, how long was he in the water? Has he been sitting in the water the whole time? You know? But he's sitting by the moat, or he's sitting by the river's edge, like kind of lurking around, and there's soldiers
like in the water. He's in the water.
In the water, yeah. And the soldiers are eating lunch by the water, and he steals he steals a blade from the soldier and his gold without the soldier noticing.
Yeah.
And I do like that. I'm like, that's cool. That's like world building. That's D&D 101 world building.
Yeah, no. And it comes after like he promises to never steal again to God if that, you know, that cow's head, that bull's head wasn't a creature and it, you know, turned out to just be a skull, you know. And I like how he steals it here and he goes, I know I promised, Lord, never again. But I also know that you know what a weak-willed person I am. So yeah, dude, I mean, this is like, it's a proto Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, and then I started realizing, I'm like, he kind of does this in all his movies, so to speak. You know, he did this in Biloxi Blues. He does this in a little bit well, not really in War Games, maybe a little bit. He's just wisecracking in War Games as well. He's a wisecracking guy. Yeah,
and then, but you know, in Cable Guy, he plays it a bit more straight because Jim Carrey's going to be a bit more zany. So, and by the way, I love Cable Guy. It's so
like
good.
You just wanted to bring up Cable Guy. And I love it too.
Cable Guy.
I actually I love that movie. Ben Stiller directed that movie. God, yeah. Ben Stiller is amazing. If you guys have not seen the second season of Severance, it'll blow your freaking mind. Anyways, this is kind of cool because Marquette and his men continue to ride, searching for the mouse, and they ride across a dirt patch, and then out of the patch comes Mouse, kind of hiding under the ground.
Yeah, he was like covered in dirt, you know.
Yeah, he's wearing his prison garb, and he continues along a snowy riverbank, which is interesting because he's like, we've got snow now, and then we get snow later.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess Italy is like that. But again, my God, these locations are stunning.
This one, yeah, when he goes across the riverbank and he doesn't know where he is and he's mumbling to himself and he's rambling, it's really beautifully shot.
Yes, it is. It is.
Quick cut to a man on a horse who happens to be Navarre with his Ladyhawke Tuah, and he puts his arm out and the hawk rises on his hand. We know who this is now, but let's pretend that we didn't, and it's just some guy on a horse.
Yep. You only see him from the back. You don't really get to see what his outfit is, because, spoiler alert, it's going to be really cool when you do see it. He's like a medieval Batman almost.
Yeah, I love it.
Me too. Like, his costume design is fantastic.
I agree. Cut to Mouse coming to a small farm, a little village. He's stealing clothes. And he's putting the clothes underneath his prison garb, and some kid, as he walks by, says, "He's taking Daddy's shoes." and Mouse goes, "You've got that right, little darling," which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
Later in the evening, Mouse is arriving at another village, fully clothed now. The man on the horse is watching him from afar with a hawk. It's almost time for sundown, by the way. He goes to the innkeeper and asks for a drink, and he wants to celebrate with a toast to everyone. This is like an outdoor courtyard with a thatched roof kind of over the sitting area. He wants to make a toast, and he says, "Let's drink to a special man who's been inside Aquila dungeons and lived to tell the tale." There's 3 or 4 cloaked men sitting at a table nearby, and he walks towards them, and one of the men says, "Then you drink to me. I've seen those dungeons." Mouse gets closer and says, "Are you a blacksmith, carpenter, stonecutter, prisoner?" The man turns around and says, "I didn't say a prisoner," and it's Marquette. Da-da-da! This is funny because this whole sequence now is Mouse trying to escape from all the men, and he does a pretty good job of it at one point.
Yeah,
he's actually getting away.
Yeah, did you notice Matthew Broderick was doing as far as I could tell, almost everything. He was doing like some fun parkour stuff, like, sort of jumping over a table, kicking a guy. Like this scene is really cool. And then it ends with him on that thatched, roof that you're talking about. And he could have easily fallen through, and you could, he wouldn't have gotten hurt, like killed or anything, but he could have gotten hurt. And that's all Matthew Broderick. I was like, that's impressive. I was really impressed by this scene here. And it kind of keeps getting awesome too, because soon we will enter, Navarre. But for now, Matthew Broderick, he's holding his own, and it's really good.
Yeah, it's really cool. He does this one technique that I learned as a young kid from my brother Eric. When you have someone in a full Nelson, if the person just slouches down and puts their arms up, you can easily slip out of a full Nelson.
Yeah.
If they haven't cinched it completely behind your neck.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Matthew Broderick's doing all of it.
Yeah. But finally, like you said, he gets caught by the men, and one of the men,
just like I like it.
he gets caught by one of the men and kind of starts to flail around, causing one of the soldiers to accidentally move his sword and hit Marquette in the face with his sword. So yeah, the soldier did it, but it's really Mouse's fault.
I like how Mouse is like, "Oh, I am so sorry,"
because he knows what's next. They hold him up against a beam and they're getting ready to chop his head off. But then out of nowhere, the man who's going to chop it off gets hit in the arm with an arrow. Another man gets shot with an arrow too from a crossbow, and the man who's been shooting said crossbow is Navarre, a.k.a. Captain Navarre. Da, 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 da.
Dude, and yeah, he's got like a badass crossbow that can hold 2 rounds, which is really cool. And he's got like that cloak cape, like sort of half cloak cape on him. One arm has like the shoulder pad armor piece, but the other arm doesn't. It's just, and it's all black with like this really like some sort of like red highlights and everything. And like later on, we're going to see his helmet too. And I'm just like, okay, guys and gals, I can see why young me liked, this movie, because he looks really cool. It almost comes off as like a medieval superhero. He looks great and he acts great.
Yeah, his look is fantastic. I could see a lot of kids emulating that in their D&D characters.
Oh,
sheets.
dude. Yeah, man. If I played D&D as a kid, I would have totally fucking played as Navarre.
Yeah, I feel like this movie's a little bit of a bait and switch for a young child, because you see Rutger Hauer and he's so badass because he is.
Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, but it's just a lot of love in this movie, a little kissy and a lot of what do you call that, melodramatic.
Yeah. It is a very melodramatic film. Again, yeah, I don't know if I really gravitated towards this because of my as Diallo would say, my heart pangs for Isabeau, aka Michelle Pfeiffer.
Isabeau,
which is funny because I don't even know if we've even talked about her as Michelle Pfeiffer like in this entire like discussion. I think we've only referred to her as Isabeau. Oh, yeah, but I do love how she has a very strong 1985 haircut though.
She does. I'm like, whoa, that is very much a Pat Benatar-esque. Yeah, but anyways, Navarre is introduced at this point, and Marquette knows exactly who he is because, yes, in fact, he used to be the captain of the guard. And now, Francesco Navarre, I believe his name is fully.
No, Francesco's the guy that's going to get pushed into Navarre.
Sorry, yeah, right. Never mind. Roll that back.
Poor Francesco.
So, anyways, everyone recognizes him, including Francesco, who's one of the soldiers. And
you could tell they were friendly or something, It's like, hey.
Yep. And then Marquette kicks Francesco into Navarre's sword, killing him.
I did not see that coming, buddy. I was like, whoa, what a dick move. Because, and he did, the bad guy did it because Francesco was like, they were both lowering their swords. It was like clearly like, oh, like clearly he's not going to attack Navarre because they're friends,
Yeah, Marquette's a douchebag, and he's like, when he realizes it's Navarre, he goes, one of my men told me you returned. I wanted to cut his throat for lying because I knew you weren't that stupid. But after Francesco is killed, this starts a battle where Navarre kicks the crap out of everyone. His sword now has been, obviously disposed with Francesco at the moment. So he's like, he picks up horseshoes and hits a guy with the horseshoes.
Cool. Yeah.
He kicks the crap out of Marquette, throwing him into a fire, which causes Marquette to set on fire yelling at his soldiers for them to put him out.
And I think too, like, Zach, one of the things that might, like the violence in this is not extreme, but then there's going to be a kill towards like the latter half of the movie of like a villain that we will get to, and it's played by somebody, and we'll call it out when we get to him. And that kill is so disturbing and gruesome that I'm like, who is the market for this movie?
Yeah, because I do love that kill, and
Me
I wish
too.
there was more of it.
Yeah.
Side note, and I'll talk more about it on our Wrap Up After Dark series. If you're not a Patreon member, we have a show called Wrap Up After Dark each month where we just kind of recap what's been going on the last month. We talk about the episodes we did, whatever fun things are happening in our lives or not so fun things happening in our lives, depending on what's going on. We've mentioned some of the movies we watched over the course of the month. I just watched the animated Lord of the Rings movie.
Oh, cool.
And it is badass. Like, I don't know why this movie didn't do well. Well, of course I do, because people are stupid. But because the movie is really freaking good.
Wait, are you talking about the Ralph Bakshi one from the 70s?
No, I'm talking about the new one that came out last year.
Okay.
Battle of Rornir or whatever the hell it's called.
Okay.
Anyways, it's really fantastic. With it ties into what we're talking about right now, the sword fighting scenes.
Yeah.
Because as an anime film, because it's a Japanese anime, it looks like Miyazaki basically did a Lord of the Rings film. It is beautifully made, and the story is compelling as hell too. So highly recommend it. I'll talk more about it on the Wrap Up After Dark though. Okay. It's free on HBO. You can watch it on HBO.
Okay, HBO. Interesting. I thought it'd be Amazon, but okay, HBO. Got it.
This is a great battle sequence, and what's cool about this, I always love consistency when it comes to post-battle scenes, because Navarre grabs his sword. He gave the crossbow to a Mouse, and Mouse had run off, and rightfully so. So the crossbow's on the ground. Navarre runs over to pick up the crossbow as well, and he gets on his horse, who's named Goliath, but we'll find that out later as well too.
Yeah, it's a big black horse, and it likes to trot around too, like it does the feet trotting thing. You know?
It's very cool. Yeah, I love that. And unfortunately, it looks like a horse might have been injured in this, but in
the climax fight, dude, I wrote that down too. I was like, I don't think that was supposed to happen.
I don't like that at all, but that's a whole other story. Anyways, clearly Navarre is on his horse, kicking ass, going fast, and he catches up to Mouse, who's on the run, and he picks up Mouse to take him with him.
He just scoops him up. It's just shoop.
They head off into the forest.
Yeah, it's really cool, and because he jumps over a gate in between some other guards, and and again, it's like you don't know this until, I mean, you kind of understand it here, but I think it gets reinforced later. He was the captain of these men, so he doesn't really try to kill any of them, because at one point they were like, he knew them and everything. So even when he's running out of here, he like bonks one guy in the head or something. He only killed Francesco by accident, and then the other guy who had like a crossbow, he killed him. But you can tell like he's actively tries not to kill his brother and his former, guardsman. Yeah,
he kind of he kills only if he has to.
Right. And even later, like at the end, he's like, I was your captain once. I hope to be again, get out of my way. Like when he tries to get in the church at the end. So there is this idea that, like he's not trying to kill any of them, but he will if he has to. And he will kill some more, moving forward.
Yes, he will. He will kill.
He's killed before, and he will kill again.
Cut to Navarre and Mouse and the Ladyhawke. Lady Gaga Hawk, as they arrive they're in the forest, and they arrive at someone's home.
It's like a small, homestead type of thing.
Yeah, very much if you've ever played any of the later Legend of Zelda games. Just realized there's a Legend of Zelda game, Twilight Princess.
Yeah.
Where he turns into the wolf.
Yes. Yep.
I wonder if that was inspired by this movie at all.
I'm sure. I mean, I think even though this quote unquote bombed, a lot of people our age saw it back in the day. So it probably, I would guarantee you that it had something to do with Ladyhawke, with, Twilight Princess.
Totally. I mean, look, these movies, again, they play so well on paper because when you describe it, you're like, oh my God, it's amazing.
Right, yeah. He turns
And then
into
when
a wolf? Really?
Yeah.
Holy
What?
shit.
Freaking hawk lady? This is
Yeah.
rad. Sign me up. And then you watch, you're like, okay, this is made for adults though.
Yeah. Well, you bring that up, that it's on paper, this is awesome. And, the movie's also awesome,
Yeah,
although it has its problems. But apparently there's been a TV show in development for this for a while. So I can see that. Like I can see people being like, "Oh, you know what? Like again, pitching the idea around Hollywood. It's like, yeah, what a cool idea. Like I see how you can get a lot out of this concept. The concept itself is strong."
Yeah, this sequence is great. So they get to this little farmhouse in the forest, and there's a lady there who apparently can't speak. Maybe her tongue's been cut out.
Caw-caw.
Yeah, but her husband can speak perfectly fine. He grabs a big axe and basically he's like, there's no place for you here. And Mouse shows the money that he'd stolen earlier, and the man then says, well, you may sleep in the barn, which is funny because literally it's right next to where they're standing because they just turn and this thatch, again, it's like rickety thatch roof barn is there for the night for them. By the way, the set design in this is really cool. It looks very ramshackle at times, but it feels authentic. Like this is probably what, people who didn't have, a blacksmith or a cement or anything like that would do back then.
Yeah. Yeah. All the sets, I should say, none of them feel like sets.
Right.
And everything kind of feels authentic for the time. Some stuff is gross like this, and then you go back to the castle and it's very elaborate and beautiful. By the way, the old husband here, buddy, is a Podcasting After Dark alumni.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he was in Seinfeld.
Yeah. Go listen to our review of the Onion movie.
He played this guy in Seinfeld.
Oh, every time I said that, Zach just had this blank look on his face. But this guy, he played the blind guy in Demons.
Oh, so Italian. That tracks. Cool.
Yeah. He's Italian actor.
Oh, while his blind wife or
his daughter, no, it wasn't his daughter's his handler or something.
His handler is getting diddled next door.
Yeah. So his name was Alex Serra, but yeah, he was the blind guy from Demons.
Cool. No relation to Michael Cera.
No, and not spelled the same either.
Oh, well, there you go. So there. The two of them, Axeman and wife with no tongue, are watching as Navarre and Mouse go into the barn. This is cool. So he's got his sword. You see him rest his sword aside with a beautiful red ruby in it. And then he has this really cool black leather satchel. And inside he pulls out a black helmet, like you mentioned earlier, and a beautiful piece of fabric as well. Which looks like it could be a dress because it is. Mouse approaches and asks Navarre if there's anything else he can do because he's going to turn in. Navarre's like, yeah, you can take care of my horse. And he says another thing, sleep with one eye open and don't disturb me. I'm liable to take your head off.
Sleep with one eye open, gripping your pillow tight.
Mouse goes to try and take Navarre's horse. And this is funny because he apologizes. He goes, sorry, girl. And he goes, she's a boy. His name is Goliath. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry about that. And Navarre just tells Goliath to go with Mouse, and Goliath happily obliges. He walks off, and as he does, Mouse says, I feel like I should tell you a story about a teeny little man named David. Whop, whop. Cut to the sun getting ready to set, and you see Navarre holding the fabric up to his cheek lovingly. He sees the sun through the wall of the barn because, again, it's pieces of wood, branches.
Yeah.
And he watches the sun set. Cut to Mouse in the forest collecting sticks and talking to himself, and then basically getting pissed off that he's having to do Navarre's dirty work, be his errand boy. So he decides to just take off.
Yeah, he talks himself into it. In this movie, it's weird because they play this this back and forth between Mouse and Navarre, whether he wants to be. Well, I'm like, why would you rather be back in the cells than like gathering wood in the beautiful, lush countryside? Like, dude, come on, get over yourself.
So, in Pokemon, there's Team Rocket, right? There's Jessie and James. James. And Jessie, by the way, her voice actor passed away about a few months back, and which is sad because she was the voice actress pretty much the entire time of Jessie.
Yeah.
Great voice actress, by the way. I love Jessie and James. They're probably two of my favorite characters in Pokemon. But James is, he's this thief who's always trying to steal Pikachu, right? That's the whole point of him. And but he comes from like a privileged background that basically has everything. So I'm thinking Mouse comes from this privileged background with a silver spoon in his mouth. He could do no wrong. He's bored. He's a bored little rich kid shit who decides to become a thief and a pickpocket, and he gets thrown in prison for it, and it changes his whole life.
Okay. You know what? I will accept that. I like that backstory for him.
I'm sure. I'm glad you appreciated that.
It's you who is making the world building now. Good job, buddy.
It was you all along. So anyways, yeah, he's building up like why he shouldn't even be doing this for Navarre. He starts to walk off, and then he hears a weird sound. And to kind of defend himself, he pretends like he's talking to other people, like
this
Pierre
I like.
and Louis.
I like
He goes, Pierre, go back. I'm going back to the barn now. And
you hold your ground, Pierre.
Yeah. Show no mercy, Pierre. And he runs off.
This was my favorite, like Matthew Broderick, like talking to himself dialogue in the movie. I loved this.
Right. It's so funny. So he's making his way back to the farm, and he continues to hear these different sounds, and out of nowhere, the innkeeper is there with his axe, and he tries to chop Mouse's head off.
Yeah.
And then a wolf comes out of nowhere, jumps on the man, and attacks him and rips him to shreds. We don't see that happen. It's just described later.
Yeah, it's apparently, in kind of like the look on Mouse's face or Philippe's face, you're like, oh, it looks horrifying, but we don't see it. This movie is not like gory at all. The most we get is, arrows sticking into people type of thing. Probably the bishop's death is probably the goriest, but the most disturbing will be Cesar's death. And
yes,
we'll talk about who plays Cesar when we see him.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
So Mouse runs to the barn, grabs Navarre's crossbow, and
spills his fucking bolts everywhere. I'm like, come on, are you gonna pick those up?
Exactly. And he picks up the crossbow, starts to load it up, and tries to pull the trigger, and then out of nowhere, a woman in a cloak behind him calms him down and tells him to be quiet. She shushes him. Mouse, and then she starts to walk outside of the barn. He says, don't go out, there's a wolf out there. She tells him to wait, but she continues to walk out. She walks up to the wolf. And so Mouse runs up to the top of the barn to hide. Mouse then says, I'm dreaming, but my eyes are open, which means maybe I'm awake dreaming. Maybe I'm dreaming I'm asleep. Or maybe I'm asleep dreaming that I'm awake, wondering if I'm dreaming. And then he continues on this rant basically about whether he's awake or asleep.
And then you hear her say, you are dreaming. And he's like, ah! He freaks out, He
freaks out. He goes to the corner of the barn where he, in the second level, and he goes, I do not believe what I've just seen. This is a weird cut because you cut to the next day, and it's Mouse and Navarre on the horse, on Goliath. And you're like, wait, are we going to get an answer about what happened the night before? We will, guys. We're coming. We're going to get back to that. Because you immediately cut to Marquette on his horse. Again, a scene that probably could be cut, but he's on his horse. He rides to basically like a
little outpost
checkpoint.
Because, like a checkpoint. If it's another video game reference, like a checkpoint. But I actually like it because he's riding so hard. He's riding the horse that he's riding so hard that he has to switch to another horse to let that one. Otherwise he was going to ride it till it died, essentially. So I thought that was kind of a cool idea.
It's totally cool. I get it, but I'm like, there's a lot what just happened the night before was so dramatic, and we're like getting a couple scenes right afterwards. Can we get back to that, please?
Well, it's funny because, because I'm sure that these scenes are added in so that way when he does get back to the castle, it doesn't like necessarily look like he just teleported there. Like they're trying to show you the urgency of it, but I don't think you need it because when George Lucas was doing the special editions of Empire Strikes Back, he added in a scene of Darth Vader walking back to his shuttle on Cloud City to go back up to his Star Destroyer. He's like, ready my shuttle. And George Lucas added that because he thought that people like couldn't figure out that how Darth Vader got from Cloud City back to his Star Destroyer, but I don't think anyone had a problem with that. Like, I think we understand, like, we get it that there's things that we're not seeing and it's just because of time. And in that case, like, sort of with that same argument, I think that these things, like, the bad guy, riding his horse all the way back can be cut as well. The only thing I dug was that he swapped horses. I thought that was kind of a cool touch,
Yeah, it's a cool scene, but definitely
not necessary.
Wind up on the floor, yeah.
Right, and again, going back to the point of like, I don't need this movie to be an hour and a half. I'm fine with it being 2 hours, but cut that scene out and give us like, like you just said, it was like a weird cut earlier. Like, give us a little bit more maybe exposition or something. Like maybe show us where Mouse was like hiding. Was he under? I want to see like him hiding under the hay and having Navarre walking back into the barn and be like, oh, good morning, good to see you. Like, let's go. Like I would have rather had that little bit of dialogue than seeing the guy ride the horse, the bad guy ride the horse all the way back.
Yeah, because this is what happens. So you cut back to Navarre walking in the forest with Mouse and Goliath, and the hawk is on his side. It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful shot because the leaves are like falling on the ground at one point. It's just like, it's kind of very cinematic.
Yeah, no, actually, this is one of my favorite, like, I think they go to this location a few times, but yeah, the leaves are all on the ground or on the floor, and it's like fall, and it's kind of foggy, but the forest is, like, very dense,
yeah.
And you can tell it's not, like, American forest, like, it's definitely European, and this is just, again, another stunning location in this movie. Like, there are no bad locations in this movie.
No. And it's funny because Mouse is trying to bring Goliath with him, and he goes, "Come on, girl. I mean, boy," which is funny. But then they sit down where they're gonna rest for the night, and Mouse says, "I could do with some rest after last night's going on." And you're like, "You're just now talking about this? I would have been the first thing out of my mouth the next day."
What the fuck happened? Oh my god, let me tell you, Navarre. First off, where were you? Second of all, here's all the shit that fucking happened.
I mean, so they've already left the farm.
Yeah, they've been riding for a while.
Mouse says, the wolf could have killed me. It was horrible, but he tore the farmer's throat out, but he left me alone. And there was more. There was a woman, like fine porcelain, with deep blue eyes, almost like a bird, and her voice of an angel. And Navarre gets very, jealous, and he goes, "What did she say?" "Well, I asked if I was dreaming, and she said I was." Mouse says, "I'm not insane. You must believe me." And Navarre says, "I believe in dreams." Navarre then says, "The lady, did she perhaps have a name?" Mouse says, "She didn't mention it." And then Navarre says, "Maybe she'll wander into my dreams. It would be nice." He looks at
my wet dreams.
Yes. He looks at the hawk and says, "I could call her by name and pretend we met before. I've waited a long time for such a lady." He tells Mouse to get some sleep, and he says the bird will alert us if anyone comes. And they both go to sleep. And then Mouse says, "Well, I've got to be out of my mind." But that's it. That's the scene. That's what you get from.
Like, tell me what she like. Navarre hasn't seen her for 2 years. Tell me what she looked like. Tell me in great detail what she looked like. Like, my God. I'm with you. I want all of this to be fleshed out. I really do.
I mean, it's not until something is going to happen in a couple scenes that is obviously going to propel cause Mouse to finally realize that, Isabeau is the hawk.
Yeah.
But Navarre's not telling him anything. Well, he barely knows him. I get that. Maybe that's why he's not.
I understand that.
But literally the next day, the morning of, like we just said, That's when he should have been like, what the fuck just happened last night? This was crazy.
Yeah, no, seriously. The moment Navarre walked in naked, because Navarre would be naked, walking in, I'd be like, where the fuck were you? Why are you naked? I saw a lady last night. Wolf tearing out the guy's throat. It would be like a nonstop, like it would no break in my sentence whatsoever,
Yeah, it didn't happen, whatever. They fall asleep and you're all good. And they go to bed because you cut to Marquette on his horse riding past villagers, riding to the castle as they open the drawbridge for him. He's blazing in, right? He rides his horse into the church, in through the church courtyard, and he gets off his horse, obviously, and he comes into the courtyard where, this is interesting, they're doing this little concert being performed for the bishop, and a woman is dancing like a bird.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
And she's got like feather type things on a dress.
Yep.
They stop and get startled by him because apparently they're having a white party and Navarre's the only one not dressed in white.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, white. This is where white parties started.
I remember those.
Dirty crap. The bishop does not turn around to look at Marquette. He's pissed off that he's basically soiled his sacred land with his dirty self. He asks if he's found Philippe Gaston. And Marquette says he's not within my custody at this time. And then the bishop says to them, why did you invade my garden unwashed? Marquette says, Navarre has returned, which startles the bishop. The bishop says, walk with me. And he says it in a way like, what's his name? Emperor Palpatine from,
Yes.
He's very much channeling, or maybe Palpatine channeled this guy. Because, 83 was when Return came out, right?
Yeah, Return would have already been out by then. Yeah, he's got just the typical bad guy intensity.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
Jedi. So Marquette says that Gaston is with Navarre. The bishop says, in the hawk, there must be a spirited hawk. The hawk is not to be harmed. Is that understood? The day she dies, the new captain of the guard will preside at your execution. We live in difficult times, Marquette. The famine has prevented the people from paying the proper tribute to the church. I raise our taxes only to be told there's nothing left to tax. Last night, the Lord visited me in my sleep. He told me that Satan's messenger is traveling amongst us and that his name is Navarre. Marquette bows and walks out, and the bishop calls down from the rafters of his courtyard and asks for a man named Cesar. Bring me Cesar.
Hey everybody, Corey here. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Have you been wondering where's the beef? Well, on our podcast, Throwback Trivia Takedown, you might just find that out, as well as some other things about the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
We're a nostalgic-based trivia show that pits two challengers head-to-head in a duel of the decades, with categories ranging from movies, TV and music, to slang, food, and fashion. You're sure to get the best in retro-themed trivia.
So strap on your jelly shoes, grab a Surge, and walk like an Egyptian to your favorite podcast app and check out Throwback Trivia Takedown.
I heard even Mikey likes it.
And now, back to the show.
Cut to Mouse chopping wood with Navarre's sword very shittily, if that is shittily is a word I'm using in this case. He's chopping wood with it. It's not doing a very good job.
No, well, it's not made for wood chopping. It's
No.
not an axe. It's made for killing men.
The sword is almost the size of the mouse, by the way.
Yeah, and it's what is funny too, because the way he carries it later when he's with Isabeau, it's like he can barely pick it up, but here he's like, chopping wood with it.
He's chopping wood with it. Yeah, he's chopping broccoli. He's chopping broccoli. Suddenly he goes to chop the wood, and Navarre grabs a sword and says, "This sword has been in my family for 5 generations. It's never known defeat until now."
Until now. It's like, hold on. I like that line because it's a
too.
burn, right? It's like,
it's sick burn.
It's you've defeated this sword because you're chopping wood with it. This is so lame.
So, Rutger Hauer is like, again, I want to do more Rutger Hauer movies. I like I said it earlier, A Breed Apart, we have to do that movie.
I want to do Blind Fury.
Blind Fury, Breed Apart. The Hitcher is going to come down the pipe eventually as well. I want to do Wanted Dead or Alive. I know
you told me one time, because I've never actually seen it, but you said that it's like basically it's like it's like The Punisher. The movie, it's like basically a movie about the Punisher.
Yeah, it's based on a Steve McQueen show back in the day, a Western that they modernized. But there's a scene where he has like a weapon arsenal that reminds me of straight out of the Punisher.
Yeah,
like, he would be a great Frank Castle. That would be perfect casting.
I kind of have a feeling that they wanted Rutger Hauer as Frank Castle back in the day, and then they got Dolph Lundgren. Robert Ortiz can probably correct me on that one, but I feel like that's something I remember. I remember Rutger Hauer was up for Punisher.
Don't get me wrong. I like the Punisher with Dolph Lundgren, but
yeah, me too.
Man,
just doesn't have the skull.
Hauer,
just you got to put the skull on him,
or
put Rutger Hauer in the role. He would have been awesome.
Totally.
I wonder if he wouldn't have dyed his hair though. Like, I feel like I've never seen Rutger Hauer with anything without his, other than his blonde hair. Maybe he was like, I will not dye my hair.
I will not. Yeah, he was also in he's been in a couple other sword and sorcery movies. One of them was directed by, what's his face, who did RoboCop.
Verhoeven? Paul Verhoeven?
It's called Flesh and Blood, Flesh plus Blood, Flesh and Blood. Jennifer Jason Leigh is in it as well. I just got a Blu-ray release, I think, from Umbrella. One of those boutique companies put it out.
I remember that movie. I remember that cover, and I remember that that name. I never knew that was a Paul Verhoeven film.
Yeah, me neither. So we're gonna have to do that one eventually.
Wow. Yeah.
Anyways, the whole point of back to the sword, he starts showing the jewels to the mouse. He said, this jewel represents my family name. This one is our alliance with the Holy Church in Rome. And this one was my father's from the Crusades. And this one, he shows an area of his sword where there's a missing stone. And the bishop says, the mouse says, I didn't take anything.
Yeah, I like how he's like, you didn't think I did that, do you?
Yeah. And he says, no. He says, Navarre says, each generation's called upon to follow its own quest. And Mouse says, what's your quest? And Navarre says, I must kill a man. And Mouse says, tell me, does the walking corpse have a name? Navarre says, yes, the Bishop of Aquila. And then Mouse says, well, you have much to do, and I've been a burden to you, so I do hope our paths cross again. And he starts to walk off.
Exit stage left even.
But Navarre, yeah. And then Navarre grabs him, and he's like, I need you to guide me into the city. And Mouse says, not for the life of my mother, even if I knew her.
Yeah.
Navarre says, you're the only one who's ever escaped from there. And Mouse says, it was a chance. I fell down a hole. And Navarre says, I waited almost 2 years for a sign from God, and then I heard the warning bells of Aquila. I knew that the moment my destiny would come, you'll be my guiding angel, Mouse. And Mouse says, I talk to God all the time, and no offense, he never mentioned you.
I like that line. I wrote that one down, too.
Mouse says, strange forces at work in your life, magical ones that surround you. I don't understand them, but they frighten me. You give me new life. Truth is, I can never repay you. I have no honor. I never will have. I don't think you'd kill me for being what I am, but better than that to return to Aquila. Suddenly, the sword is thrown at a tree by Mouse as he starts to leave. And Mouse goes, I'll gather some wood for the fire. Because he's going to stay.
Dude, that was shocking when I saw that. I was like, oh my God. Like the first time I was watching with Myra.
The sword going in the tree?
Yeah, I was like, because it goes right past him, flies right past Matthew Broderick. And then when I was watching it for my note taking, I was like, okay, let me actually pay attention. And yeah, you can see the wire attached to the tree that the sword's going to basically fly down. But like, without looking for it, I didn't notice it the first time, and I was completely, startled by the sword sinking itself into the tree. So overall, great effect, great scene. I like the dialogue, but then I was a little bit confused because the next scene is going to start with Matthew Broderick's character, Philippe Mouse being tied up.
Yeah,
and it's weird because I was like, well, then why is he tied up? Because he's like, okay, I'm going to do it. I mean, I get the logic is that, Navarre's going to tie him up when he turns into a wolf because he can't trust that Philippe's going to run away or not.
Right.
Or not run away. It's just weird that this scene ends with Philippe being like, oh, no, I'm on board now, type of thing. Obviously, it's under duress. but then it's like weird to see him then tied up. Like I just, again, it's another time where I wish I saw Navarre tie him up and be like, you're going to wait here. And Philippe's like, but I'm not going anywhere. He's like, no, I don't trust you. And then he walks off into the shadows, and I want to be like, Philippe, be like, where are you going? Type of thing. And then all of a sudden, then, Isabeau comes walking into the scene. So it's like, I would have rather have seen that, like, one walk out of the scene and then the other person walk into the scene than having this interesting kind of almost like a smash cut of Matthew Broderick being like, oh, I'm on board because obviously I'm scared. But, like, I get the logic. It's just the movie's language is a little confusing.
Oh, it's a lot confusing.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, because you cut to the next scene and you see someone chasing after a rabbit and you think it's Mouse.
Yeah.
But it's actually Isabeau. And you're right. Suddenly, Isabeau is about to catch the rabbit for dinner and gets startled by Mouse, who's tied up. And he gives Isabeau this whole story about, he had a terrible fight with these soldiers, but they didn't want to kill him, so they tied him up to honor the bishop. And they're coming back, and she goes to untie him, and when she does, he runs off.
Yeah.
So it doesn't jive very well. I mean, it's fine. Like, you watch it and you're like, okay, the scene's passable, it's fine. But this is like, at least as far as we know, as a observer, this is only the second time these two have seen each other. And wouldn't Mouse be like, hold on, what's your name?
Like, yeah,
like,
why
who
are
you
only here at night?
Yeah,
like, what's
where'd
the
you
deal?
come from?
Yeah,
like, but suddenly it's like, hello, lady, hello, my lady, would
Yeah.
you untie me? And then he just takes off. Like, it's a little too lighthearted. That's what it is for
Yeah.
me. It's too light when the obvious story, there's a lot more to the story, but it's like, he's not allowed to know that yet, and we're not allowed to know that. We're not allowed to know that yet, so he's not allowed to know that.
Right.
And it doesn't move it. It moves the movie along, but it doesn't jive cohesively. It's not very cohesive.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because it is 2 hours, and I'm like, just
It's a lot.
And there,
of
I still
time.
have questions. Like fill that 2 hours, more efficiently.
Well,
you
you
know?
don't need a 3-minute credit sequence then in the beginning,
Right,
And then,
yeah.
and you don't need almost a 10-minute fight scene at the end. You really don't to get your whole point across,
Right. And fill that time in with more of these answering some of these questions that we have.
Right. Yeah, because there's going to be a fight scene soon for all you fight fans out there, and it's really badass, and it actually helps move the plot along.
Yeah.
And it gets us to the point of Mouse finally realizing that Lady Gaga is actually Ladyhawke.
Right. Yeah. Because again, all the beats of this movie, I think, are necessary. Like we need all of them, and everything. There's just these gaps that I just wish was filled in.
Yeah. So this is nighttime too, by the way.
Yeah.
Right?
And obviously shot day for night.
Right. And Navarre, so Mouse runs off. You hear a wolf howl, which is Navarre. And that's when Mouse runs off, and he's like, "You tell the captain he ties a wicked knot." And suddenly the sun is now rising. Hawk approaches Navarre on his horse, and Navarre says good morning to it. And then he says, "Let's go find Philippe." Philippe the cartoon mouse. Does he say cartoon?
Huh?
I believe. No, did he? I wrote that down. Anyways, he goes,
No.
let's go find Philippe.
Why would he say cartoon?
I don't know why. I don't know why I wrote that. Anyways, so
That was probably a note to yourself. Philippe sounds like a cartoon mouse name.
Yes, it does. So I meant to write cut to, and I wrote cartoon.
Oh,
So
okay.
he says, let's go find Philippe. Cut to Mouse on a countryside watching Marquette's men, and then a guard grabs him from behind. Guard grabs him. He's now at the camp of the guards, and they ask where Navarre is, and he says, "Oh yes, I saw him going south towards Aquila." And then one of the soldiers says, "Then we ride north."
Hey, I like how Mouse says, it's not polite to assume someone is a liar when you first meet them.
Right, and the other soldier who grabbed him initially goes, "Fine, we'll ride south towards Aquila."
And I like how he's like, Mouse is like, but I was telling the truth. So like, like, Lord, I'm very confused with these lessons. I'm trying to tell the truth. I do like some of the conversations he's having with quote unquote God.
Yeah, me too. Cut to Navarre with his hawk on his side, walking past a little farm, and suddenly you cut to Marquette's men loading up to battle. And Mouse is on the back of the horse with chains, and he's shackles around his wrists, and he bites the man that he's sitting in front, that he's sitting behind of. And
this causes the man to kind of go, ah!
Yeah,
which causes Rutger Hauer, Navarre, to be like, uh-oh, what's going on?
Yeah, so Navarre is at the same place and doesn't know that the soldiers are there.
Yeah, because they're kind of hiding behind like huts and stuff like that. It's a trap.
It's a trap. So suddenly, at that point, that's when a battle ensues. Navarre, starts shooting the men with his crossbow, and then Mouse, hits a man with a rock, causes the soldier to shoot the crossbow in the air instead of at Navarre, and it hits the hawk in the wing or chest area, right? In the chest area, and the hawk goes down.
Yeah, it's a good like effect too, because I couldn't figure out how like they did that, because like there's like a hawk or a dummy of a hawk flying through the air, I don't know, but it's got like an arrow in it, and it's like plummeting to the ground. Like, so I don't know how they did that with like a real hawk. Like, that was impressive, It's very dramatic, and then Navarre takes an arrow to the shoulder too from somebody as well.
That's badass. But before I get to that, it's totally Mouse's fault that the hawk got shot, because it wouldn't have happened. Yeah, Navarre gets shot in the shoulder with an arrow, which he pulls out, which is badass because he uses it on another soldier.
Yeah, he like sticks it right in the guy's gut when he's coming at him on the horse, and the guy just kind of slumps over. And then I like how the other guard starts coming at him too, or the other soldier, and Navarre just like has his giant sword, and the other guy's like, nope, and just turns around.
And retreats. Well, he's probably dead anyways, because when he tells him what...
Then when he comes back empty-handed, he's going to be dead anyways.
Exactly. So Mouse and Navarre walk over to the hawk on the ground, and Navarre's crying. And the hawk, Navarre says, you'll be all right. And he tells Mouse to get a piece of cloth from a saddlebag. Mouse goes and brings the cloth and wraps it. They wrap it around the hawk. Navarre tells Mouse to go get help. Mouse looks confused, and he says, "Sir, the bird is done for." And Navarre gets really pissed. And he says, you follow that road until you find a ruined castle. There's a monk named Imperius. Give him the hawk. He'll know what to do. And Mouse says, "You're the only one who could ride that horse." And he says, "The horse will do as I say. So get my horse now. And know this, if you fail, I'll follow you the length of my days, and I will find you." And again, Rutger Hauer is so badass. He just looks so intimidating at that point.
Yeah, he does. And apparently, I guess, like on the IMDb trivia, apparently when Matthew Broderick gets on Goliath, Rutger Hauer kind of like pats Goliath on the butt and sends him, off. Apparently, one of the takes they did, the earlier take, he hit Goliath, or the horse actor, too hard, sent Goliath like racing with Matthew Broderick on his back. And, you when the horse is going that fast, you can't let go. You just have to like fucking hold on, And he was gone, like over the sunset, like over the hills. Everyone's like, well, I guess we just got to wait. And, eventually Goliath kind of just comes back, trotting back, with Matthew Broderick on the back of him, basically. But they just have to be like, well, I guess we're just waiting now.
Wow. Well, I'm glad. He's lucky he didn't die.
I know.
Seriously. I rode on a horse not that long ago, and I was like, these things are massive, and I do not want to fall off. It's a weird feeling.
I know. I've ridden on a horse too. I'm not a big fan of horses. I don't like their human eyes and their human teeth. They kind of freak me out a little bit. So I'm not a big horse fan. And I was in Mexico like 20 years ago and riding a horse down there. But I was like, look, horse, you don't like me and I don't like you, but let's get through this together,
Right, exactly. Cue a disco music moment.
Oof, buddy. The music is wild.
Yep, it's
so
wild.
Fucking wild, man.
It's Mouse on the horse riding to Imperius's castle. It's very weird, though. It's a disco track for a very like dramatic moment.
Yeah. I mean, Myra kept like commenting on it too. She's like, "What is up with this music?" And I think it was like right around here, like right around that trap area, like when the battle happened. That's when I put it together. I was like, "This music is like Xena or Hercules. Like it's like a mid-Saturday, Sunday TV show on WB or whatever. It just has that vibe to it. Again, it's because it doesn't feel big. It feels very small
for a movie that's big."
Yeah, for a movie that has like a big production value, but also like I think too, the landscapes again are just so fucking gorgeous that the music just doesn't do it justice,
Yeah.
Because speaking of gorgeous, during this like cool little montage scene, of Philippe riding the horse, we also get a shot of Navarre praying like in this field, and bro, I mean that is like a 10 out of 10 like beautiful shot. And it's also kind of neutered by the music.
Yeah, that shot reminds me of like, Terrence Malick kind of directed scene.
Yeah.
And very cinematic and beautiful. And then, the music really kind of ruins it a little bit because you're like,
yeah, it's wild. It's like an 80s sitcom music.
Yeah. So this montage cuts between Navarre praying and Mouse writing. The hawk is biting Mouse, and Mouse is like, that's the gratitude I get from you. And they get to the castle, and you hear a voice from above out of nowhere saying, "What do you want down there?" Mouse says, "I bring you this bird. It's been wounded." Imperius says, and it's Imperius who reveals himself. He says, "Good shot. Bring it in and we'll dine together." And Mouse says, "We can't eat this bird. It's no ordinary hawk. It belongs to a man named Navarre." Suddenly, Imperius whispers, "Mother of God, bring it in quickly." Mouse comes into the castle. Imperius looks very concerned. He tells Mouse to follow him, and this is important. They walk up like a wooden plank, draw a kind of bridge, and he says, "Be careful. Stay to the left. Stay to the left."
Of course.
Comes back into play.
Yeah, no, dude, I mean, everything is set up. It's like, honestly, like screenwriting 101.
Right.
Navarre throwing his sword and missing, Philippe, showing us how accurate he is with throwing that sword. That's going to come back into play later. This one is telegraphed a mile away. "Stay on the left side, boy." It's like, that's going to come back into play later. But I mean, that's good shit. Like that's good writing.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think this is a moment, this whole sequence of how we get to know who Imperius is. You get enough information backstory with Imperius that you don't need to fully know exactly what he did. But you already know what he did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so this is a moment where less is more, where there's other moments in this movie where we needed more and we got less.
Yeah, sadly.
So they come inside the castle. He instructs Mouse to put the hawk down on a furry blanket. And Imperius tells Mouse to leave. Mouse wants to help. He says, "Go out!" Mouse leaves. And you get a close-up of Imperius talking to the hawk and telling him to not to be frightened. He goes, "I know what to do." He looks up towards the window of the castle, and he says, "We must wait a little." You cut to Imperius leaving the castle and locking it up. As he leaves it and it's locked up, Mouse hops down from a ladder above, sneakily behind him. He starts picking the lock to go inside. Outside, Imperius is picking roots to heal the hawk, like thyme, and right?
Yeah.
And other various roots. Cut back to Mouse, and he's made his way inside, and he sees a woman under the blanket. It's the woman he's been seeing the past couple of nights. And she asks for Navarre, and Mouse says he's fine. She lays back down. He says, "There was a terrible battle. He fought like a lion. Then the hawk was struck. But you know that, don't you?" And she says, "Yes." And Mouse says, "Are you flesh or are you spirit?"
Oh, and I love what she says. She goes, "I am sorrow." That was fucking. And see, this is like, and I like him.
This
like,
is cool.
Yeah, when he says, "Are you flesh or are you spirit?" And she says, "I am sorrow." Like that was a great line, and that's where I wonder if like maybe that was some of the punch ups from the guy who wrote a lot of the James Bond stuff. Like that. Like there's some dialogue in this movie that's really fucking good, and I'm wondering is it all the original screenwriter, or is it some of it some punch ups being done or something?
Or is it Mankiewicz?
Yeah, Mankiewicz. Yeah, that's who I meant. So who knows? Yeah. Who knows? But regardless. Great fucking line.
I agree. Suddenly, Imperius comes in, tells Mouse to get out. And he goes, and stay out and close the door. Cut to Imperius making this concoction and putting it on the lady's wound. We don't know her name to be Isabeau yet.
Yeah, right.
This is intercut with the bishop having a orgasm nightmare. No, he's having this most spastic nightmare in bed. It's back and forth, because what is about to happen is very grotesque.
Yeah, I didn't understand why the bishop. I guess later on there's a connection. Like if Navarre kills the bishop, the curse won't be broken. It'll just be around forever. They'll be stuck in it. So I'm watching this and I'm like, I don't understand why the bishop is having a nightmare when all this is happening. But maybe there is some the curse has created this connection type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've said this earlier. I know this movie's a fantasy film, but the only element that is fantasy is of their transformation.
The curse. The curse is the only thing that's fantastical. Everything else is pretty grounded in reality.
Yeah. So, like the quote-unquote evil witch who cast the spell, it's the bishop, But we don't really get a whole lot of backstory on that, which I think would have been preferred. I would have liked to gotten more backstory. I would have liked to have seen the evil... At first, I was like, "Is Imperius the one that caused this curse? Is he the one who, who did it?" But I don't think he did. It would have just been nice if, there was a book of spells or something,
Right. He caused it because he accidentally told the bishop. I mean, so that causes the curse, and he'll explain that later. But I would have liked to have seen, so the bishop looks so holy all the time. I just don't picture him having a secret lair where he makes pacts with the devil. Maybe we needed another side character behind the bishop, the Grim and Wormtongue, the evil Merlin or something, right. Type of thing. Maybe we needed that. Who knows? But yeah, again, it's I wish some of these gaps were filled in.
Yeah. So in this whole sequence, it's basically Imperius getting ready to pull the arrow out of Ladyhawke's chest, and when he does, and they show it, and it's a big hole. It's a side profile shot. You don't see too much, but you see enough to know that he's pulling this whole arrow out of her chest. And it's very dramatic.
It is.
It's intercut with the bishop having an orgasm, screaming, and then the wolf howling.
Yeah.
The bishop wakes up from his fever dream and he screams, and a soldier is at his door saying, "Cesar has arrived." A man walks in looking very haggard with a scar on his face. He does look familiar, though. And it is who, Corey?
Alfred Molina. Fucking, Doc Ock, fucking Boogie Nights, obviously Raiders of the Lost Ark. But my God, I was not expecting him at all.
Yeah, so clearly this is one of his earlier roles.
Yeah.
He was in Raiders first.
Yeah.
Prior, Raiders was 83, I think?
Yeah, so this is pretty close to Raiders, yeah.
Yeah, so he looks very similar to that.
He does.
But he's the wolf man. He's the wolf hunter.
And I like his cool scar on his face and everything. It's 3 slashes because clearly, wolf scratched him or something,
He's got a woof scratch.
Woof.
Woof, woof. Cut to Mouse, still at the castle, pouring ale and bringing it to Imperius. And hearing the wolf howling, Mouse says, "It's him, isn't it? It's the wolf somehow. It's him." Imperius says, "Drink to forget." And he starts telling Gaston the whole story. He says her name is Isabeau. She, Isabeau, came to live with a cousin. I think it was in Aquila. I'll never forget the first time I saw her. It's like looking at the face of love. Mouse finishes that sentence.
Yeah.
Imperius says, "I suppose we're all in love with her in different ways. Even His Grace the Bishop. Think of nothing
Even
else.
little Corey Stevenson.
Yeah, even little Corey Stevenson with his gigantic nipples. The bishop loved her too. His passion was sort of madness. She returned his poems unopened and unread. She was already lost to the captain of the guard." Imperius continues and says the bishop knew nothing of their love, but every day it grew stronger, deeper, richer, until they were betrayed. They seemed to have the same confessor, a weak, foolish priest. One day, in a drunken confession to a superior, he committed an immortal sin. He revealed the lover's secret vow to the bishop. He didn't realize he'd done it at first, nor the terrible revenge the bishop would take. His grace seemed to go mad. He lost both sanctity and reason. If he could never love her, no man could. And Navarre and Isabeau fled from Aquila. The bishop was an evil power for men, feared and rejected even by Rome herself. He called down to the power of darkness onto the lovers. And his fury and frustration, he struck a bargain with the evil one. I guess the devil, right?
Yeah.
You hear the wolf, and then Imperius continues. He says, the dark powers of hell caused a terrible curse. You've seen it working by day. Isabeau is a beautiful bird, and by night, you guessed it, the voice of the wolf we hear is the cry of Navarre. Poor dumb creatures with no memory or half-life of their human existence, never touching in the flesh, only for the anguish of a split second at sunrise and sunset when they can almost touch but not. Mouse says, always together, eternally apart. Imperius says, as long as the sun sets and the sun rises and sets, as long as there's day and night, for as long as they both shall live. And you hear a wolf howl. And this is when Imperius says, you stumbled onto a tragic story, Philip Gaston. Now, whether you like it or not, you're lost in it with the rest of us.
Yeah, and I mean, that was quite an exposition dump. Like, it's the biggest one in the movie, like there's no other like exposition dump like that in the film. But now we know everything. We know where we stand and whatnot. And I do like I said earlier, it does call out to the fact that like, it's almost like the screenwriter winking, being like, yeah, I get it. Like Navarre and Isabeau are the main characters, but you're kind of following Mouse. And you know what, Mouse, you're not, it's like you're not the main character of this story, Mouse,
Yeah. You're not, and I like that though. It's kind of cool to see like a side character.
Yeah. It reminds me of Big Trouble in Little China. Is like the one that I think of the most when I think of like the side character is the main is who you're following. But Wang is the main character of that movie.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's a really good comparison, actually. And I say actually because you making that connection is shocking.
I know, right?
Cut to the bishop throwing something in a fire, and he's got his big giant praying staff, but it actually has a blade at the end of it.
Yeah.
So he's been detached from the church. So he's basically also been ostracized from the church. So he's we're
like a rogue bishop.
Yeah, he's a rogue bishop with his followers. He's a cult leader basically at this point.
Yeah.
And the church has banished him. The church is still evil, but
yeah,
we're to believe that it's not. Cesar has a full like rack of all these wolf hides, and the bishop is like, none of these are good. And Cesar says, I can't kill every wolf that lives since the plague. There are more wolves than men. And Bishop says, there's a woman. Cesar says, Your Grace. And Bishop says, a beautiful woman with alabaster skin and the eyes of a dove. She travels by night, only by night. Her name is Isabeau. Find her and you find the wolf. The wolf I want. The wolf who loves her back. A black wolf. And then Cesar says, Isabeau.
Isabeau.
Isabeau. Navarre. Cut to Isabeau asleep on the fur. And the mouse is watching her. She starts to wake up, and Mouse tells her basically not to sit up because she might start bleeding again.
Yeah.
Isabeau asks his name, and he says, most people call me Philippe the Mouse. And Isabeau says, you travel with him, don't you? And Mouse says, yes. And he talks about Navarre. He says, Navarre says that she, Isabeau, is the best reason for living, and that one day, together, they will know such happiness as two people dream of, but never do. And Isabeau says, he said that? Mouse says, I swear my life on it. Cut to soldiers arriving at Imperius's castle. We find Imperius outside the castle, like sitting on a deck or something. It's like a rundown castle, but it's kind of cool looking.
No, it's really fucking cool looking. Especially a previous scene when it was like dusk or whatever. It's a another fucking 10 out of 10 location.
Right, and the soldiers have not arrived yet at the castle, but you cut to Mouse coming out to talk to Imperius, saying she does not know that you're the priest that betrayed them. This is when Imperius says, God has given me the knowledge to cure them, basically. And then Imperius says, after 2 years, he's brought us back together again. And he gives Mouse like a hoodie to put on. And Imperius says, I found a way to break the curse. Navarre must confront the bishop and to begin his own true life again. He must confront him and kill him. And Mouse says, with his ancestor's sword. Imperius says, he must do that. But if he kills the bishop, the curse will never be broken. You cut back to the soldiers approaching, and Imperius says, go now. Look after Isabeau. Imperius goes to like a hole in the castle and says to the soldiers order him to open up and in the name of the Bishop of Aquila. And
I like how he's like, I've met the bishop. You are not him.
Exactly. He goes, this is a house of God, not a brothel. He won't open, so they break the front door down, basically. Mouse runs to Isabeau to rescue her. He wakes her up. He tells her to come with him. As the soldiers march in, they're walking across one of the drawbridges, and Imperius, who's up high above them looking down from a parapet or a deck or whatever, he pulls a rope that's connected to the bridge and it collapses. And he goes, sorry, I'm not an architect.
I'm just a monk.
They get stuck in the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other soldiers continue up the pathway. Isabeau and Mouse make their way up a tower. Imperius sees a soldier walking up and instructs him to go through the main doors. And as he does, they start to walk over the bridge that they walked over earlier with Mouse. And he tells Mouse to stay to the left, but he doesn't say that to the soldier at first. He starts to, and then he holds back as the soldier walks across and falls through the bridge into the water below.
Yeah, it's
and
like
he goes,
a boat
stay to the left.
Which is dumb of him to say because the other soldier just hits him across the head, and he's like, oh, now I know. Well, I guess that soldier would have been fine anyways because he wouldn't have fallen in the hole, you know.
Right. There's
but
like two soldiers. Yeah, exactly. And he got one of them. He got rid of one of them.
Yeah, and they got clonked in the head by the other one.
Right. So there's like two soldiers that make their way up the tower when they spot Mouse and Isabeau. Mouse and Isabeau are on top of the tower, and they close the door that leads up to the top deck. And Mouse is looking around for something to keep the door closed, so he's standing on top of it, and the soldier takes a sword and starts shoving it through the door. When he sticks the sword up through the hole at the door, it knocks Mouse back, knocking Mouse into Isabeau, who falls off of the tower. So again, Mouse is responsible yet again for Isabeau almost dying.
This is true.
He's holding.
I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, you're right. He's 2 for 2 right now. Isabeau's been put in danger, mortal danger twice, and both times is because of Mouse.
Exactly. He knocks her off the side. He's now holding on to her. But again, the sun is rising as she is slipping out of his hands. She completely slips out of his hands and starts falling as the sun rises. And the sun rises just in time for her to transform into the hawk. So her scream turns into a hawk call, and she transforms right in front of the Mouse's eyes, and he sees it. We don't see it, but we basically see from his perspective. Well, we see him and like looking horrified and amazed at the same time.
I like all the transformations in this movie. Like they're not practical effects. They're more like, fading in and out of images type of thing. Even when we see later Navarre, actually we see him change. It's still very, very dreamlike. But
I like that too.
Yeah. But this movie, dude, like I kind of like, again, other than obviously being influential on me as a kid and like how much I loved Michelle Pfeiffer, I didn't remember anything until it happened. And this scene right here, I was like, oh my God, I remember this as she's falling and she's screaming and it kind of transforms into the, like you said, the hawk caw or whatever, I was like, oh my God, I'm sitting there like as all of this is rushing back to me and I'm like, I'm 8 again. You know what I mean?
I'm in love with Michelle Pfeiffer.
I feel everything.
Meanwhile, she healed up pretty damn fast. Mm-hmm. So,
there is that. Like, yes, that is something that, okay, that's fine. I'll let that slide. It's definitely a movie thing, but yeah, she's doing A-okay with just having a crossbow bolt in her chest, like 12 hours ago.
Yeah, not too far from her heart.
No.
So a soldier comes through, and when he does, there's no one on the top of the tower, and he's looking around. He looks over the tower side, and there's Mouse sitting on a ledge, a big rock ledge that's sticking out of the tower. And he asks where the woman is, and he says, she flew away. The soldier yells at him again, but then out of nowhere, an arrow hits him in his side, knocking him over the tower to his death. From afar, you see Navarre with his crossbow, and he waves.
Yeah, and I like that because he says like she flew away, God's truth, she flew away, and then I like how he gets killed, and he kind of like, or the guard guy gets killed, and this is when like Philippe sort of learns his lessons. He goes, "It always pays to tell the truth, my lord. I see that now," because he was telling the truth. He was like, "She flew away. I swear to God."
Right, exactly. So now all the soldiers are dead or dispersed. And you cut back to Navarre with his hawk by his side, approaching, and Imperius is sitting on a rock in front of the castle. Navarre says, "I thought you'd be dead." And Imperius says, "There are times I wanted to kill myself, but I'm very grateful for this." Navarre says, "It's I who should be grateful." And Imperius says, "I have the chance to redeem myself, to save you and Isabeau, because God has told me how this curse may be broken." And then Navarre says, "You betrayed us once. I warn you." Imperius says, "In 3 days, the bishop will hear the confession of the clergy at the cathedral in Aquila. All you have to do is confront him, both you as man and woman in the flesh, and the curse will be broken, and both of you will be free." Navarre says, "Impossible. As long as there's night and day, yes. But 3 days hence, there will be a day without night, and a night without day." Navarre says, "Go back inside, old man. Go back to your drink." Imperius says, "You think I'm drunk? I swear to you. God has showed me. He's forgiven me." Navarre says, "He hasn't forgiven you. He's made you mad." Imperius looks sad. Mouse runs down to check on Navarre. And Navarre says, "I'm in your debt, Mouse." Mouse says, "She wanted me to deliver you a message. She still has hope and faith in you." Navarre says, "You're free to go now."
I like how Mouse was like, "I know," because he did so good. He's like, no, there's no. I know I'm free to go.
Right. He goes, "I know that." He goes, "Then, sir, you and Ladyhawke will go to Aquila." Then Navarre like looks at him funny, and he's like, "Ladyhawke," and Mouse says, "It just so happens I'm heading that direction myself." Navarre says, "Better grab your things, because I'm leaving right now." Mouse runs off, and Navarre smiles and looks at the bird and says, "Ladyhawke."
Ladyhawke.
Mouse runs up to Imperius and says,
"What if he said Ladyhawke Tuah?"
Ladyhawke Tuah. Lady Gaga Hawk Tuah. And as Mouse runs up to get his stuff, quote unquote, whatever this stuff is, he runs past Imperius and says, "I'm leaving with the captain. Follow us."
Yeah, I do like that.
I do like that too. That's a simple line, done.
Yeah.
Instead of like suddenly Imperius following them and like, why is he following them?
Yeah,
I'm glad
that's good. Like, yeah, I like that they actually included that.
That's important.
Yeah.
Cut to Navarre and Ladyhawke Tuah on the road with Mouse running behind them, which is interesting. At one point, I'm like, why is he jogging? Sure, he wants to get his work. Want to get his steps in for the day, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you can hear Mouse saying, the old man's right about breaking the curse. You and Isabeau could face the bishop together as man and woman. And then Navarre cuts him off and says, "You will not mention that again. Not to me, not to her, understood?" Cut to Imperius in a carriage with his horse following them.
I think it's a donkey.
You say horse, I call you a jackass. Cut back to Navarre walking with the hawk. Navarre says there's going to be a storm soon and the sun's going down. And Mouse says, "How can you tell?"
With so many sunsets, he's like basically like he can feel it.
Right. And he tells Mouse to take care of Ladyhawke and tell her I love her. Ladyhawke coming soon. Navarre sees
to a theater near you.
Navarre sees a horse
or a
coming.
Streaming service if it's a TV show.
Right. This is kind of a weird moment because Navarre sees a horse coming and then like splits.
Yeah, and we know it's Cesar, but like, it's a weird editing because like Mouse and Ladyhawke kind of leave, and he kind of like, then Navarre kind of like turns around because he hears something, and then it's the horse. So it's like, but the horse was like already there, so like they would have seen it too,
Right.
And it's not like he goes like after it, because later we see him transform. So it's not like he was like gonna go attack that other person that was there. He just sees it, and then we kind of move on from it until we come back around to it.
We move on with an interesting scene of Mouse talking to Ladyhawke, Isabeau, as Hawk, and he says, "You used to be my favorite thing for dinner. I used to kill one every night.
Yeah.
Serves me right for getting involved in this nightmare. Day. And then a night without a day without a night."
Oh, and they're like in a barn right now.
That's right. They cut to them in a barn.
Yeah.
And he realizes that the sun's setting, and he says, "I'll wait outside," because he realizes she's going to turn. He walks outside the barn, and rain starts coming down. It's total Hollywood rain. Like
Yeah. It's like still sunny. you know?
Oh, I've seen that at Universal Studios. And he runs off to past the barn to like the local inn, and there's a carriage outside the inn, and he steals a bunch of clothes from the back of the carriage. He puts the clothes on the inside the barn by Isabeau. He goes, "I can't vouch for the fit." And he says, "Take your time." And he closes the door to the barn. He changes clothes too. Cut to Navarre, who's taking off his clothes, and he morphs into a wolf. It's kind of a cool, very subtle, fade.
Yeah,
he
no,
goes down behind a hill and then suddenly comes out as a wolf.
Yeah, the wolf comes up. Yeah, no, it's cool. Like again, it's less American Werewolf in London and more just dreamlike, like cross-cutting fades and stuff like that. And
Right.
to be honest with you, for a movie like this, I like the way they did it.
Me too.
And it's really cool because he's like Rutger Hauer's like in slow motion running at the camera, like
that's
ripping
cool.
off his clothes and shit. It's really cool.
Cut back to the village outside the barn doors, and Mouse knocks on the door, comes in and sees Isabeau, and she's comes out from a stall area. Mouse basically says that Navarre has been instructed to take care of Isabeau while he's gone. And Isabeau kisses Goliath and says good evening to him. She says to Mouse, she goes, "Well, what do you instruct me to do, Mouse?" Barrel, quack, quack. And Mouse says, "I instruct you to sit by a warm fire, drink a cup of sweet wine, and listen to bright music carefully. Perhaps dance." She smiles at him. She says she doesn't know how to dance. He walks over to her, and he says, "Well, I'll teach you." And they start dancing.
Hey everybody, Corey here. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages. Hey everybody, Corey here.
And it's me, Zach.
We wanted to tell you about our new show called The Coscarelli Factor.
You can find it on our Patreon at patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. The Coscarelli Factor covers every single film that Don Coscarelli has directed. And some other little bonus features in there too, like maybe the music videos he directed as well.
That's right. You can find all the episodes under the Auteur de Force tier on our Patreon page. Like Zach said, that's patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. And if you sign up today, you will get access to the complete Carpenter Factor series, where Zach and I went through every single movie that John Carpenter directed, from Dark Star all the way to, well, all the way till the end. So sign up today to our Patreon page, and you can unlock all kinds of other things as well, like ad-free episodes and our monthly Wrap-Up After Dark show.
Patreon helps keep the lights on in the podcasting after dark world. It gets pretty dark out there at night, and all your support keeps us from getting too scared.
And thank you to everyone who's signed up to our Patreon page. We really appreciate it. And as always,
we'll catch you on the dark side.
And now, back to the show.
After they dance a while and giggle and laugh, Mouse goes to get the wine for her, but he picks up the sword as well, which is gigantic.
Yeah, this is when he's kind of like dragging it. But I'm like, you were just like cutting logs, with it. You can pick it up a little bit. Why don't you try to impress Ladyhawke Tuah?
Yeah, right. You're clearly in love with her.
I know. We all are. Corey, you, me, we all are.
They go outside because they're on their way to the inn. And when they do, they're confronted with Cesar. She starts, Isabeau screams because she sees dead wolf pelts all around the carriage, his carriage.
Is she screaming because she thinks that maybe it's Navarre, even though they're all like light gray color and he's like clearly a black wolf? But is she like so upset because she thinks that he killed Navarre?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
And, Mouse basically threatens to cut him if he gets any closer. And Cesar rides off and chuckles as he does, like he's not intimidated at all. It's all a part of a trap.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Isabeau comes out of the barn on Goliath riding after Cesar.
And I like how Mouse is like walking back into the barn. He's like, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. Talking about Navarre,
Yeah, and he's like, doesn't he say, this is the part where he's like, this is the worst day ever.
Yes, this is the worst. I think probably you've had worse days, buddy.
Yeah, you got to dance with her. Come on.
With the love of your life.
Right. Isabeau rides off into the forest, and she has a dagger in her hand, looking for Cesar.
This is such a cool scene.
Yeah, you're cut to Cesar setting up wolf traps, which are wicked wolf traps.
Yeah.
Like, they're not bear traps.
No.
They're not like the traps in, the Deadly Kids movie we did, where it's basically just clamping on your foot.
Yeah.
These have spikes on them.
People toys, Devil times 5. Yeah.
Devil times 5, yeah. Cesar throws rocks at some of the traps to make them go off, which is weird.
Didn't get that. I didn't
Like,
quite understand that.
You're a master trapper and you're having to test the traps. It's kind of
No, it wasn't a test. I think it was to lure her to an area because like she's stalking, she's kind of sort of stalking him. But he's kind of like, he's outmaneuvering her. And there's a really cool shot where like she steps like right next to one of the traps and she doesn't know it, but she misses it. But yeah, she's like kind of in like an open area. And then he, like, from the woods, is setting off the traps with rocks. And the only thing I can think of, because I'm like, why would you do that? You'd want as many of those traps out there, increasing your probability. But, like, the only thing I think of is, like, he's doing it to kind of get her to come back, like, her attention to come back. But then the wolf a wolf comes trotting, out of the woods. So it's like, well, I don't think you were luring that wolf by setting off the traps. So yeah, I think ultimately that little part doesn't work. Yeah. But overall, the scene is really cool, mainly because it's lit really well and it like looks really cool. And it's going to end really sort of intensely.
Yes. Yeah. So this wolf that you mentioned, which looks just like Navarre, by the way.
It's another black wolf.
Yeah. It walks into the trap and dies. And then Cesar goes to check on it.
And he like reprimes the trap.
Right.
Like, he takes the wolf out of it and sets it up, like reprimes it.
Right. And Isabeau sneaks up on Cesar to stab him, but then a wolf startles both of them.
And I guess that's Navarre.
And she like kicks Cesar at the same time and knocks him face first into his trap, and the trap clamps down on his head.
Yeah, and dude, like this kind of movie so far with the level of violence, I would have been fine with it just clamping on his head, you hear him scream, and that's it. But no, he's on the ground wrestling with it and like twitching and kicking,
right.
And it's not bloody per se, but it is the most disturbing kill in the movie.
Yeah, totally agree.
Almost doesn't sort of fit with the film, but I love it. I love it though.
It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, actually.
Yeah.
And at this point, Mouse has catched up to both of them, and Cesar and Isabeau, and the wolf takes off after Cesar is dead.
And this is another time, like, I wish if you're going to use multiple black wolves, like have one be kind of a red herring like they did with this scene, I do wish that, like, Navarre had maybe a scar across his eye, and that way the wolf would have one too, so we would sort of know which one was him. Because it's like, come on, like they make sort of a big deal about how he's jet black, and like, and that would be appealing to Cesar because it would be, sort of special. But then this other black wolf was also jet black, and you're just like, oh, well then they not look the same. That rare,
Yeah, no, I agree. They look like identical.
They look like the exact same wolf. They probably were,
Yeah, probably. Cut to daytime now, and Navarre is in freezing water with his crossbow catching a fish.
Yeah.
With Mouse asleep nearby on a tree limb, which Navarre drags over to a fire to keep him warm and wake him up.
I like this because he made him breakfast, to kind of thank him and everything. I love this.
It's a full spread of food. It's amazing.
Like a whole meal.
And Navarre asks what happened. It's the next day. And Mouse says, nothing I couldn't handle. Because again, he doesn't remember anything as a wolf, right?
Yeah, because Isabeau doesn't remember anything when she's a hawk, and he doesn't remember anything when he's a wolf. But obviously, like when he is a wolf, like he doesn't attack Isabeau. Like they're still connected. They don't have sentient thoughts about it. They're animals at that point.
But that doesn't track though with this next scene, because when the hawk arrives, it doesn't go to Navarre. It actually goes over to Mouse on his arm.
Right, because she is starting to feel connected to Mouse. And actually, this was another part that as a kid, I remembered, but I didn't remember it until I saw it, here. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember this scene. Like fucking it flies on lands on, his arm and not on, and there's a little bit of like tension there and everything, but it kind of gets diffused though.
No, it totally does, because, Navarre's like, tell me everything that she said, and I warn you, I will know if it's her words or not. And Mouse says, well, she was sad. First, she talked about the day you met, and that she cursed it. And then I saw her remember how happy you were together before the bishop's curse, and her eyes glowed. No, she glowed. She loves you more than life, Captain. And Navarre says, did you know that hawks and wolves mate for life? And he goes, the bishop didn't even leave us that. Long shot of the hawk flying around.
Yeah. It's a very, again, it's like hero shots of the hawk, and it's almost like B footage, that they were just going to use later, maybe inserted here and there, but they make almost like this musical montage right here. Yeah. And again, I'm like, take this out, because like, obviously we love Ladyhawke, but like, I don't need this now. I don't need this at the hour and 15 minute mark, hour and 20 minute mark of a 2-hour movie. Like now I don't need you to fluff up Ladyhawke for me. Like she's already cool in my book. I want more story stuff. Right.
Yeah, I agree. Suddenly Imperius shows up out of nowhere. We know he's nearby though.
Yeah.
He immediately launches in. He goes, in 2 days time, you can face the bishop.
It's like, shut up, dude. I reheard it.
Gives him the same speech, And Navarre says, I'll be in Aquila tomorrow, one way or another. And he tells Mouse, he goes, stay here with the old man. And then Mouse says, you can't get inside the cathedral without me. And Navarre says, I'll get in without your help. Navarre takes off with the hawk, and Imperius says, because Mouse is trying to implore him as well to do what Imperius says, but Navarre wants nothing to do with Imperius, because Imperius was the one that helped cause this curse to begin with.
Yeah, he hates him. He hates Imperius.
Imperius puts his arm around Mouse, and he thanks him for trying to stand up for the truth. And Mouse says, I should have known. Every happy moment of my life has come from lying.
So it's almost like he learned his lesson about saying the truth. Now he's like, well, maybe not.
Right. Cut to Navarre riding towards Aquila. There's shots of day and night. There's a shot of a wolf on a mountaintop looking out, and you see by a fire Mouse showing up where Isabeau is and startling her. She starts looking for her knife, and Mouse says, this may be our last evening together. And she says, why? Mouse says, I didn't want to tell you until I really believed. But I think you can break the curse. We have a plan. Imperius shows up.
I was like, we have a plan. And Imperius like, I'm here.
And yeah, Imperius shows up out of nowhere, and they're like, and then they start digging a hole in the ground.
Yeah, because there's a little bit of a time jump, but she even Isabeau sees Imperius is like, kind of rolls her eyes, but you know that they told her what the plan was, and she's on board, because now they're digging a wolf trap.
Yeah, they're digging a wolf trap,
which will later become a wolf nest.
Right. And Isabeau walks off into the distance, and suddenly she yells out and screams. While Mouse and Imperius are digging in the ground, they're bickering back and forth.
Yeah, it's funny.
And suddenly they get out of the hole and they see the wolf coming. Isabeau waits for the wolf, and they're surrounded by snow. They're like in a snowy field, but it's not a field. It's actually a nearby lake.
Yeah.
Because as the wolf comes towards Isabeau, the ice gives way underneath the wolf and he falls into the ice. She runs over to try to rescue him, and Mouse grabs Navarre's sword that has a like rope connected to it. He puts the sword in the ground after having a hard time picking it up, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
Now he can put it in the ground. And he grabs and he like drags the rope out to Isabeau and the wolf that's struggling in the water. Long story short, Mouse gets into the water with the wolf to help the wolf get out. And in the process, scratches up Mouse's chest. You don't see that just yet, but definitely does happen.
But yeah, but it's like a fucking like 3-minute scene of him trying to get the wolf out of the water and
struggling.
Yeah. It's pretty rough. Then I feel bad because it's clearly fake snow, and when he's getting out, like whatever that stuff is that is sprayed, that is not snow or organic, it's like melting like almost like in the water, it's almost becoming like paint on Matthew Broderick. And I'm like, my God, you guys all have cancer from whatever the fuck that shit is, but it's clear, like you can tell that there is snow around them, like in the distance, but they had to create that little set area. I think it was like a pool or something, because there's boulders behind them kind of covered in snow as well. You can tell that they are fake and it's just like tarps thrown over things with snow on top of it. I mean, it completely works. Like back in 1985, you watch this on HBO like we did, you never noticed this shit. But now that you have HD, but now that's in HD, you see the wire, where the sword, slides across and stuff like that. It's just stuff that I enjoy seeing. But like, yeah, story-wise, this was a pretty intense scene, and it's also going to be what sort of like solidifies Navarre completely trusting these two guys, or at least completely trusting Mouse.
Right, because the wolf passes out. So they bring the wolf to the hole, which has now kind of been turned into a bed.
Right, yeah.
And the wolf passes out with Isabeau. She's holding the wolf, and she's speaking to God, the universe, and she says, "We must live as human beings. Our lives are in your hands now." The next day, or the morning of the sun rising, Isabeau is sleeping with the wolf. And as the sun rises, you get the one moment where they are able to see each other at the exact same time as humans. She's slowly turning into the hawk. He's slowly turns from the wolf into human, but she hasn't turned into the hawk yet. And they link eyes for just a moment, and they go to touch each other. And as they do, she turns into the hawk and flies off. And of course he cries and lets out a scream like a wolf.
Yeah.
And Mouse is watching all this unfold, and he cries.
It's fucking beautiful. Like, it's honestly, it's if this scene didn't work, the whole movie wouldn't work. This scene is like the cornerstone for the entire movie, and I love what they did with it. The only time you ever sort of get prosthetics is like Rutger Hauer has like wolf contacts in and whatnot. But again, they just do the sort of fade in and out type of thing, and I felt the emotion here, man. Like this is when the movie is firing on all cylinders, and I think this is absolutely beautiful.
I agree. And now Navarre goes from sad to anger, all the stages of grief.
Of course.
And Navarre's packing up to go to Aquila, and he asks Mouse where his sword is, and Mouse tells him that it's fallen through the ice. Navarre says, "That sword was the last bit of honor I possessed." And Mouse says, "This is no mission of honor, but there's a chance for life now and a new life with her." Navarre says, "I need to kill the bishop." And Imperius says, "Navarre, listen to him." Navarre gets upset and grabs Mouse and throws him to the ground. And when he does, his shirt opens up and you see this big prosthetic piece of plastic on his chest with carvings in it. No, I'm kidding. It's you see the carvings on his chest and Navarre's like, "What is that?"
And guys and gals, it's not one scratch. It's not 3 scratches. His chest is carved up like a fucking turkey, man.
His body looks like a cutting board is what it looks like. Yeah. And Imperius is like, you did that to him when he saved your life. And Navarre says, "Forgive me." He helps Mouse up and he hugs him. And Navarre says, "I'll show you idiots how to catch a wolf."
Yeah.
And I'm like, what did he mean by that? Well, you're going to find out in just a minute.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, so we're moving into the third
act.
Yeah.
Jinx.
And yeah, I like that. I like how he's like, fine. Basically, he's like, because there was like a little bit of a discussion well, like if why go, like right before the unveiling of the chest and everything, like even even Mouse was like, well, if the thing is going to be in 2 days, why does it matter if you kill him tomorrow or if you kill him in 2 days? Like, why the fuck does it matter, essentially? And then now this is Navarre saying, like, okay, I'll wait. And because of that, you're going to have to catch me tonight, and I'll show you guys how to cage a wolf, like properly cage a wolf.
Right. You cut to the bishop's castle at night, and Imperius shows up with Mouse underneath the carriage, and Isabeau is sitting next to him, kind of cloaked up. Mouse sneaks out of the carriage and goes back to the moat, back to the sewer, sneaking back into the castle.
And Mouse says, he goes, "We've come full circle, Lord. I would like to think that there is some higher meaning in all of this. It certainly would reflect well on you." I very much enjoyed that dialogue. But by the way, Zach, keep in mind, this is nighttime when he kind of pops into the moat, and he's gonna be swimming essentially all night because of the way the editing sort of dictates that. But you'll get through the scene, and then you'll come to next day, and he's still swimming. He's
still swimming.
Yeah, it's a little wonky. It's a little bit wonky.
He just hung out by the side until it was time to go.
Yeah,
so he could see. Yeah. So Mouse is back sneaking back into the castle, and Imperius and Isabeau have come into the front of the gates where the guards have held them up, asking what they're doing there. And Imperius says, "I have a surprise present for His Grace the bishop, and the people of the parish. Fine pelt." And it's like a cow skin that he's got on the side of his carriage. And then the soldier pulls the cow skin back, and you see a wolf in a cage, growling at the guard. And the guard gets excited to kill the wolf. And he says, "I've never had the pleasure of killing a wolf before." And Imperius says, "How strange. That's exactly what the bishop said. I'm sure he'll understand you're depriving him of that pleasure." And the soldier stops before he sticks the sword inside the cage. And the soldier tells them to move on. They ride into the entrance of the castle, and Isabeau is nervous. You go to the next day.
Yeah, Matthew Broderick's still swimming.
Right, still swimming. You cut to the bishop getting ready for his service, and the Mouse is going through the hole that he exited in the beginning of the movie to leave the castle.
I wish they had the same music playing, dude.
Yeah, but they don't. They got their act together, and we probably shouldn't do that for this scene. Cut to the services. Little children being harmed by priests.
Molested.
God. Hate religion. I wrote that down.
I do too, buddy.
It
is the cause of all of our problems.
Including this one.
Including everything.
And Mouse is now ascending the long tunnel tower that got him to the church to begin with.
Yeah, it was where he got his hands stepped on in the beginning of the movie. So he's full circle coming back, but now he's smarter about it now.
Cut to a quick shot of the sky with clouds forming. Something ominous is coming. Then to Imperius with Navarre. Imperius says the curse can be broken, and Navarre says, "It's day, old man, like it was yesterday." Cut to the bishop going into the church with his people, and then cut to Mouse making his way, trying to break through the grate again, but there's people standing above it. So
starts stabbing some guy in the foot.
Yeah, he starts stabbing some guy in the foot, and the man freaks out, and he's like, "There's rats here, there's rats." Well, the man starts actually jamming a stick in the grate at first, almost hitting Mouse, and then they don't see Mouse, so they walk away from the grate, and Mouse is able to get the grate open and get into the church. Mouse now has a cloak. He makes his way through the church and notices that the main gates to the entrance to the church are locked by the soldiers. Cut to Navarre with Imperius, saying the mass will be over soon. "I cannot wait if Philippe has done his job. I can kill the bishop now or never." Imperius says, "No, this chance will never come again." And Navarre says, "You're right. If the service ends peacefully, The cathedral bells will begin to toll, and you will know I failed. I beg you to take her life, quick and painless. And he gives the hawk to Imperius. And the hawk, by the way, has like a mask over its eyes, like they do, to keep it calm.
Yeah, the eye blinders or something. Yeah,
and the leather around its feet.
Yeah.
And Imperius says, "I can't do that." And Navarre says, "Yes, you can. I beg you. The cruelty will be to damn her life to a half-life, and that's not what she wants." Imperius says, "I couldn't do it." Navarre says, "Have you ever considered this is what God intended all along?"
I do like the fact that Navarre is telling Imperius to, kill her. If he dies, kill her, because she wouldn't want to live this half-life existence. But I'm like, well, why don't we just wait and see? Like,
ask her.
Ask her. Why don't you put her in charge? She. My God, just 1985's idea about chivalry and stuff like that. It's she is a person. She can say, maybe she'll say, maybe instead of dying, I'd rather do this.
I'm a man. She is a woman. I make the choices for her because, let's be honest, women do not have the brain capacity of a man.
Exactly. That's what this reeked of,
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God. And it also sets up this unnecessary drama at the end. And I'll call it out, especially the soldiers trying to ring the bell, because they don't know what the plan is. So to them, why do they care about ringing the bell? They don't know what the deal is, but yet
it's an emergency,
right? But the movie portrays it like they're in on the plan,
Yeah,
it's weird.
I mean, this last 15 minutes could have been condensed into 5, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't even given
or 10
Imperius this thing to do. I would just been like, look, if I don't make it, take care of her. Take care of her. My God, don't kill her.
Give her corn by day, and when she's a human by night, feed her like a normal human.
Exactly. It's fine, guys. It's fine.
That's
she doesn't need to sleep, so it's all good.
Yeah, she's got half a brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you cut back to Mouse in church, and he's watching the mass continue as he's making his way to the back door. Backdoor Johnny. Cut back to Navarre on his horse, and he's in full armor now, and you see his helmet on his face, and he looks badass.
Dude, I fucking love that helmet. I think it's so fucking cool.
It's the coolest looking knight helmet, yeah.
It really is. And Myra shat all over it. She was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And I was like, no, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
I think it's cool. I like it too. It's very visionary. It's visionary. Knights of the magical light.
Dude, my first fucking thought it was very Visionaries-esque, and I thought of you, man.
I think of you too. Navarre shows up at the front of the church, and the soldiers are out front.
Oh, this is the one where I was like, I was once your captain, and I hope to be again. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. Like, you think that you're gonna be fine after all of this and just get your old job back, essentially.
Yeah, because the one soldier pulls a sword out on him, but Navarre just knocks it out of his hands.
He slaps him. The guy's like, okay, you can pass.
Idiot. Yeah, basically lets him pass because Navarre suddenly puts his helmet face guard down and starts trotting towards the entrance of the castle. Meanwhile, Mouse is trying to pick the lock of the castle of the church when a soldier inside notices and starts to charge Mouse with his sword to chop him. As he brings his sword up to chop Mouse, Mouse unlocks the gate to the church. Navarre pushes the doors open with his horse and knocks the man out of the way, interrupting the service.
That was cool, dude. And also, if this was going to be like a rated R movie, I would have wanted to see Goliath crush that dude's head with his foot or his hoof or whatever. But that was good editing, because the guards bearing down on Mouse as he's trying to get the door open, and right when the guy gets there, the door just gets blown open by Goliath, and that was really fucking cool.
Right, and at this point now, the ceremony has stopped. Bishop sees...
Everyone's in for a show now.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Navarre spots the bishop spots Navarre, and then he charges the altar with his horse. And as he does, the horse does a trot dance. And I'm like, what's going on? I thought he just would run in super fast with his horse. Nope, he's doing a little dance. Suddenly out of nowhere, though, as Navarre gets down to where the bishop is, another horse approaches, and it's Marquette. Marquette and Navarre charge each other with their horses, and a horse battle ensues.
Yeah. And this is like while they're
with no
fighting,
music playing, by the way. There's no music playing in the scene, by the way.
And that's why it works, because of that. And during this fight, I swear to fucking God, this was not scripted, but the white horse, not, Goliath, the other horse, like falls over, and then you can tell the stunt guy gets like sort of trampled by Goliath a little bit. And they cut into it, and they kind of match things up with the actor and everything, but it didn't seem like from the master shot, it didn't seem like the horse was like supposed to fall at that moment.
Yeah, because this is a cool kind of back and forth with the horses, but when it happens and it knocks Marquette off his horse, yeah, I agree. It doesn't feel staged, and I feel really terrible for the horse. I hate seeing that shit. But Marquette throws his helmet at Navarre.
Dude, this made me laugh my ass off. So Marquette is on his back. Navarre's sort of standing over him. Marquette throws his helmet at Navarre, and it flies through the air 3 stories and shatters the glass, thus, revealing the whole eclipse that's coming. I get it, like why we had to get there.
Yeah.
But the preposterousness of him chucking this helmet like so high, like I'm like the force of that. Like if he actually connected with Navarre, he would have taken his head off. Because when it breaks like the skylight glass, it's still going up. You know what I mean? Like he chucked it with such force. It was just, guys and gals, it was kind of preposterous.
It is, and also his helmet, by the way, is like the white and gold version of Navarre's black helmet.
And silver or whatever. Yeah, so fucking cool. Both of those helmets I thought were cool as fuck.
Yeah. So that helmet continues to sail off into the sky.
It's still orbiting our Earth today.
And at that point, Navarre goes to charge the bishop at the altar. But more soldiers come and try to stop Navarre, and he takes them out easily one by one. There's a cool POV shot from Navarre's helmet through the face guard.
Yeah, I really like that, actually. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and then Marquette comes back. This guy can't take
baby!
He can't take a hint. Like, dude, you're gonna lose. And they have a sword battle. He basically charges Navarre, and they have a sword battle. Remember, Navarre's sword was, in the ice, according to Mouse.
Yeah, his main one. Yeah. Is this when Mouse goes running out of the church to go grab the sword from under the cart, essentially?
Yes. I think it's
getting
coming.
Close. Yeah,
it's coming up. Yeah. Navarre looks up as they're battling, and he looks through the broken window, and he sees the sun, but he also sees a black moon starting to slowly cover the sun because there's going to be an eclipse, like you said.
Yeah, and of course he has to say, like Rutger Hauer has to say, when day is night, when night for day, and I'm like, because of the fucking audience, like you have to say that for the dumb audience.
I mean, it's so obvious, but
I know.
The bishop slowly approaches Navarre with his staff and looks at the window as well. You cut to Imperius praying to God, and he has a dagger near the hawk. You cut back to Navarre, who yells out for Imperius to wait. Not to kill the hawk. Suddenly, Marquette comes out of nowhere and continues the battle with Navarre because, Marquette got knocked over. Marquette starts to get the upper hand, and Navarre says, "You're dead." They continue the battle, and a guard from above comes to pull down this rope for the bells. And Navarre takes out a dagger and throws it at him and hits him in the chest, causing the man to die. All he was doing was ringing a bell.
And that's the thing, and then another guy goes for it as well, and it's almost as if they understood what was happening, but yet there's no way that they would understand that. Now, real quick, I will say that on the IMDb trivia, it says Rutger Hauer was always very proud of the fact that so if you notice, he takes that knife out and he doesn't even look at his own hand, and he flips that, like he takes it out by the hilt and then flips it so he can grab the blade, and apparently he was always proud of the fact that he basically did that stunt without even looking at his hand when he did it,
Right.
And it was really cool. It was like one motion and it was like boom.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. It's awesome. While all this melee is going on, you cut to Mouse, who's gone back to Imperious's carriage, and underneath the carriage, he pulls out Navarre's sword.
Yeah.
Cut back to Marquette battling Navarre, and suddenly Mouse comes out of nowhere with said sword and throws the sword to Navarre.
He throws the sword into the fight, like on the ground, and Navarre doesn't even like notice it. They just keep fighting like around the sword, and I'm like, well, that was weird.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of like when it's not the same, but like in Big Trouble in Little China, like no, actually, I feel like there was a movie where they went to go throw the hero something, and he goes to catch it, but he doesn't catch it at all, and just hits the ground. And he's just like, "Damn it! Like that didn't work."
Well,
that
I mean,
happened.
Oh yeah, I mean, Big Trouble. He throws it at like Lopan. And he grabs it. He's like, "Oh fuck," that sort of thing. But I know what you mean. It's not the same, but yeah, exactly. But it's so weird because Mouse doesn't like say like Navarre the sword. Like you're expecting that. You're expecting him to be like
big dramatic sequence, slow motion.
It's slow motion. He grabs the sword out of the air. No, the sword lands. Navarre doesn't even like look at the sword because it's realistic. It's realistic that he would still be, fighting with the guy that he's fighting with, and they literally at one point like are grappling on the ground, just rolling on top of Navarre's sword, and Navarre doesn't even like give it any glance of like recognition,
He doesn't, and when they roll it, when he throws the sword to Navarre and it hits the ground, it flops because it's plastic. It's okay.
It's like aluminum foil or whatever.
It's really funny. I'm like, ooh, that's a really aluminum foil sword. Yeah, so they roll on top of the aluminum foil sword, and at one point, they're battling, and Navarre knocks Marquette's sword to the ground.
And yeah, and it's really cool because like Navarre is on his back, then Marquette like stabs downward, but Navarre rolls towards him, like towards his feet, so he misses.
Oh yeah, and like knocks his sword over.
Then he rolls back, basically rolling the sword out of his hand, out of Marquette's hands.
Yeah.
But he keeps rolling, and then he grabs that sword as he's sort of rolling over it, and then Marquette is sort of like in the motion of leaning forward to grab it, or he's like sort of like off balance,
Yeah.
And so he falls into the sword, into his own sword essentially, but he kind of falls into it, which I feel like it's kind of like a karmatic way. He almost dies the same way as Francisco died early in the movie, where he kind of pushes him into it.
Oh yeah, I never thought about that.
And so it's almost like karma. That's the only reason I sort of noted it, because I was like, oh, he sort of dies kind of similar, where he's sort of falling into it versus having that sword thrust into him.
Right. No, yeah. And now Marquette is dead.
Yeah. It was a good fight, though. Like, it was all a good fight.
Yeah, one down, one more to go. It's a very long fight, too. It lasts for a really long time because this next sequence is pretty short.
Yeah.
Because Navarre goes over to his sword now that's on the ground. And he looks up at Mouse, and Mouse kind of nods over at Navarre. And Navarre approaches the bishop, and a soldier tries to block Navarre, but Navarre knocks him out. He knocks him through candles. He knocks him over, and then there's candles right next to him, and he kind of throws the candles on top of him as well, which is really funny. And the bishop
stay down, dudes. Fucking stay down.
The bishop stands there with his staff. Remember, his staff has a spike at the end of it.
Yeah.
Navarre has a sword on Navarre has a sword on the bishop, and the bishop says, "But kill me, Navarre, and the curse will go on forever. We must think of Isabeau." And Navarre says, "Isabeau is dead. Damn you to hell." Suddenly you hear in the distance a woman say, "Navarre." I'm going to speed this up way faster than it is in the movie, because suddenly there's a blurry woman in the background. You know who it is. It's Isabeau. Navarre turns around, and for the first time in forever, they can see each other's faces. And because you get a shot of the moon covering the sun, and
total eclipse of the heart.
Total eclipse of the heart. And you cut to the bishop's face, and it looks like he's having an orgasm.
Oh,
You can't look at her because he's so in love with her. Navarre grabs the bishop and yells at the bishop to look at her. Look at her! Look at her!
And he's like, and then look at me! And look at us! It's like, my God, how many people am I looking at here, dude?
And, you're right about the whole dramatic thing. He's like blocking him with his arms. It's good, though. It's good acting.
Yeah, it's fun.
and he looks like he's about to cry. Navarre tells him, look at us. And then Imperius shows up behind Mouse, who's watching everything unfold. And Imperius whispers to Mouse, it's over. It's broken. Isabeau slowly approaches Navarre, with the bishop looking devastated. He's not dead, though. Isabeau approaches Navarre with her hands outstretched, and they touch hands for the first time in forever. Navarre's hand in Isabeau's, and suddenly...
And then she like walks past him, but it's weird because he like looks sad. Like he's like, oh wait, what's happening? You know, like you almost get like there's almost like a nanosecond where you think he's gonna think that she's going to the bishop, but I mean, like we all know she's not.
Yeah, so Isabeau like walks past Navarre. Navarre looks kind of downtrodden, but in her hands she's holding the mask and the leather bands that bound her as a hawk.
Yeah.
And she walks them over to the bishop, and she basically opens her hands and drops the bindings in front of him. The bishop closes his eyes because he's come at this point.
I'm going to shoot.
And Isabeau looks back at Navarre away from the bishop. She turns around, and the bishop looks incensed, angry. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the bishop has his spike staff ready and says, no man shall, and he goes to pierce Isabeau with the staff, but Navarre throws his sword at the bishop like he threw it earlier in the movie, thrusting the sword through the bishop, which goes through him, and it pushes, the sword goes into the podium or the pious or whatever it is.
He flies back and is like impaled.
Yeah, just like a shotgun blast, basically sending him back. And as it does, when the sword goes through him, if it's a split-second moment, and I had to pause it.
Yeah.
You see the sword glowing in the background, and I'm like, was that that's not from the sun?
I think that's the curse being like sort of like officially sort of broken.
So there's some
but it's great because there's like a second shot, like a nanosecond shot of also of like the bishop. Like we're talking like, when your arms are forward, but also like your feet and your legs are forward. Like he is just blown away like a shotgun blast, and that was awesome, dude.
It's a good death. It's really
good.
The bishop is dead. He passes out and he's dead. Isabeau walks over to Navarre and he's crying. Mouse is crying. Imperius is crying. Everyone's crying. Bunch of babies.
And I love how like Mouse and Imperius are like, Mouse is like kissing Imperius like on the cheek and stuff. Like I just like it. It's everyone's so bromance. Overwhelmed happening. Yeah, exactly. A little bromance happening.
Because there's like the further adventures of Imperius and the mouse.
Yeah.
There's your comic book. And Navarre's holding hands with Isabeau. They start to walk out of the church, start to make their way towards the entrance of the church.
And this is when Mouse and Imperius are trying to not sneak away, but sort of like, well, it's not our moment. So they're just like, let's just leave,
Yeah, so they're like, Isabeau and Navarre are embracing each other, and then suddenly Mouse and Imperius start to walk out, and Navarre calls them over to him.
Do you notice that like Navarre is like drenched in sweat? Like he's just like, it's like someone dunked his head in water, which I thought was great because he's wearing all this armor and everything. Of course he's going to be drenched in sweat.
Right. Yeah, it makes total sense. Imperius looks at them both and says, may God's blessing be with both of you from this day forward. And Navarre says, I bless the day he brought you back to us. And he looks at Mouse and he says, and you. And Isabeau says, you're the truest friend we could ever have. She kisses Mouse on the cheek. Mouse and Imperius start to walk out together. And Imperius says, I expect to meet you at the pearly gates. Don't you dare disappoint me. And Mouse says, I'll meet you there, Father, even if I have to pick the lock.
That's cool. I love that.
Cut to music playing, and Navarre picks up Isabeau and as everyone looks on, and he's saying, Isabeau, and she says, Navarre, and he says, I love you, and she says, I love you. And then, you kind of have a panning shot from behind, like all the people around, like circled around them, like clapping and applauding them. And there's one random dude with his arm in the air, like waving at them, like, hi, like, who's this fucking guy?
Well,
who's this fucking guy with a smile on his face?
What's this asshole smiling about?
And then they twirl around, and then Isabeau like throws her hands in the air like two wings, and suddenly she's like laughing, and the credits roll, and that's the end of the movie.
And so Myra and I were laughing hysterically during the like sort of the climax area, because like after everything is said and done, keep in mind, guys and gals, that while the battle is happening, while the fights are happening, all this is happening, there are like 100 monks like all like watching. And then after, like, I mean, the bishop is dead, the leader of the guard is dead, they're still watching. Now these two people who they don't know are embracing, and they're embracing two other people, and they're still watching. And Myra and I would be like, what the, like, I would be like, what is happening? Who are you people? The bishop is dead. What the fuck is happening? But yet they're all just sitting there watching in silence as these four people are like having this great moment together, you know? I'd be like, who the fuck are you people?
Yeah, it's like in Treasure of the Four Crowns with the evil cult leader.
Yeah,
you know? Basically, the bishop is the same deal. It's like he's been banished by the church, so he's running his own little sect here, you know?
Yeah.
And with all these, and then there's that one random dude waving his hand at the end. Hi, Mom! You know,
hey, look at me! It's kind of like the guy at the end of fucking Teen Wolf with his donger hanging out. You know.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but that's Ladyhawke Tuah.
Yeah.
And you know what? Look, it as flawed as this film has as flawed as this movie can be at times, it is still very enjoyable. I will say, in 2025, watching this as an adult, I had a completely different reaction to it than I did as a kid. Do I remember as much as I did as a kid? No. But do I enjoy it now? Yeah. Would I watch it again? Absolutely. I can see why people love this movie. You know, the positives far outweigh the negatives. Yeah. Robert, I hope you don't mind that we were goofing on certain scenes in this film, and you may or may not agree with certain takes we have on it, but, you know, that's the beauty of when we break down a movie for our patrons. You know, we are completely 100% honest. If you guys sign up to our Patreon, patreon.com/podcastingafterdark, and sign up to our highest tier to be a producer, we're going to break it down for you, and we're going to be totally straightforward with you. We're going to call warts and all, you know.
That's just what we do. We got to. You pay for the honesty as well.
Yeah, and Robert, you know, we respect the hell out of you, man. And again, like Corey said, if you go to Amazon, if you type in Robert Ortiz, and I'm sure we'll have the links in the show notes too, you can check out Robert's books. He's a poet. He's written several books, and they're fantastic. And
he even has a wedding planner. I picked that up as well.
Yeah. Check out all his stuff online. And you know, this film has, speaking of weddings, I'm sure Navarre and Isabeau will have a proper wedding moving forward. This movie screams continuation or follow-up. I would love to see this again. Like you said earlier in the breakdown, potentially a TV series has been in the works forever. Hopefully it comes to fruition, because I'd love to see something like that. I miss fantasy films, and I hope we get more of them in the future. I doubt we will, because that Lord of the Rings movie I told you about did not do well at the box office, and it's a damn shame.
Yeah. No, dude, I echo everything you just said. This was really cool to watch in 2025, especially like it was so important for me in my, you know, not just my sexual awakening as a kid, but my love awakening, I guess. I don't know.
7 years old?
Dude, like I said, it wasn't sexual. Like, I was like, I didn't know how I felt. I was like, I just wanted to be with her, you know, type of thing.
Yeah, you're the bishop.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. But like, yeah, it's not a perfect movie. The score, I think, holds it back. And again, we've said it before, it's weird because on its own, I enjoy that kind of music. I think it's fun. But when it, you know, the juxtaposition with the visuals and everything just don't kind of work for me. But the positives far outweigh the negatives in this movie. And Zach, as far as like a setup, like a story goes, I can't think of like another movie that has this kind of like where one person is something at night and the other person is human during the day. Like it's very unique to Ladyhawke, like this story.
Yeah, I agree. You're taking elements of Wolfman and turning it on its edge, which is cool. And it's a beautiful love story at its heart. And I think when it I feel like it was acknowledged, but I don't think it was acknowledged as heavy as it actually is portrayed in the film.
Yeah.
I think in the everything that came out about this really played up the more fantasy angle of it. At the end of the day, it's love being kept away from two people.
Yeah.
So, I think it...
And we have beautiful scenes, like when they both transformed. Like, I still remember that scene. Like, I remember how I felt when I was a kid seeing that. It was fucking gorgeous. Like, and we wouldn't have had it if the story wasn't the way it was.
Yep. And on the score front, I will say this score is better than Princess Bride. So I might say that out of big studio films and like big cult, not like big popular films over the decades, Princess Bride might be my least favorite score for like a big popular movie.
Gotcha.
But it's not. But Ladyhawke, we broke it down for you, Robert. We hope everyone enjoyed listening to it.
And I hope we get like an Arrow release or something at some point. I will absolutely double dip if somebody like Arrow or I want to say Synapse, but it would probably be Arrow would release something like this.
Yeah, Arrow or Umbrella.
Umbrella. I feel like this would be a perfect like Umbrella pick or something like that. I feel like Warner Brothers is pretty shitty about like letting other people like redo their movies. I think they just like to put out their own crappy Warner Brother Archives Blu-rays and
Warner Brothers doesn't care about their content. It's like it's almost like they would get rid of Bugs Bunny or something. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That would never happen, would it?
Fucking oh my god.
Anyways.
Thank you again, Robert. Thank you to everyone who signs up to our Patreon, highest tier, whatever tier you are signed up to. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. And I know we tout the Patreon and everything, but obviously times are tough and financially they may get tougher, and a free way to help out our show grow, help out $2 late fee grow is just leave us a 5-star review on whatever service, podcatcher you listen to us on. Share it with a friend. That's another free way, put it in your stories on Instagram or something.
Yeah.
That's another free way to, help us out. Like, we get it. We totally fucking get it that it's tough to like, patronize all of these podcasts and give your money when, price of eggs are going through the roof. So we get it, but free way to help all of the podcasts you listen to. Leave any podcast you listen to a 5-star review on whatever and share them with your friends and everything. And, we appreciate all the people that have done that. Or you can swing on by our merch store and on our website, podcastafterdark.com. It's podcastafterdark.com. We have a full merch store. You can pick up a shirt. That'll help us too. $2 late fee has a merch store as well on their website. That's $2latefee.com. You can go swing by there as well. So those are just nice, easy ways to help us out if you can't, afford the Patreon thing. And we totally get it. So, Zach, we are at the end of this month. So can you tease what's coming in April on $2 late fee? I know we had a lot of fun with martial arts madness on $2 late fee this month and territory marks as well. But what's April have in store?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, March was 5 weeks and we had 5 weeks of martial art madness episodes, rolling into April with a episode of Tales from the Video Store. Typically that's a Patreon only show. However, every now and then we throw out an episode of Tales on the free feed to give people a taste of what Tales is all about. And the director and writer of the movie Going Viral joined me on Tales from the Video Store to talk about the movie Going Viral, which just premiered on Tubi for free. So you guys can go to Tubi and watch the movie Going Viral. It's a really cool independent film that I think deserves a lot more viewings and more eyeballs on it. So
it was directed by Shane Pizza, right?
Todd Pringle, the writer, and Vincent Vittorio, the director, joined me to talk about Going Viral and all sorts of other 80s fun stuff for Tales from the Video Store. That's going to be on our YouTube channel as well as the audio feed. And then Grace is back for the month of April and May to talk about Daryl. We're going to be doing the movie Daryl, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year as well. And so we've got Daryl coming up the week after Tales from the Video Store, and then 80s Kids Unite, and then
you and I are doing another Versus episodes coming up soon too.
Oh yeah, by the time this drops, the March Versus will be over.
Yeah,
and then we'll have a Versus in April as well. So, a $2 late fee patron won the last Versus. That would be Dylan Laurie. He's also a pad patron as well, but he's the $2 patron. He won a Blu-ray courtesy of $2 late fee and Kino Entertainment. And yeah, every month we have Versus live on YouTube, and we play for patrons. It's a fun debate show, and
it is.
Yeah,
and I was never on the debate team growing up, and this has been fun. And I'm not going to be every episode, but I am the first 3 episodes for sure.
Yeah,
so.
You just keep on rolling. So,
why not?
Yeah, we're going to keep that train rolling, and lots of fun stuff over a $2 late fee, as well as podcasting after dark. This is, rounding out the month of March and going into April with more fun programming. So stay tuned, everybody.
Yeah, we got some good shit coming, and we have a fun interview coming pretty soon as well that Zach and I will be recording in a couple days, and but it'll drop next month, so it's a lot of fun, and thank you guys so much for supporting us. Thank you again, Robert. I'm so glad I revisited Ladyhawke. This was awesome. Thank you so much for being a Patreon member at our top tier. Hope everybody goes out and checks out his poetry books and everything. He's very, very talented.
Yeah, he sure is.
And as always,
catch me outside, Hawk Tuah, and catch you on the dark side.
Buy those Bitcoins. Buy some Bitcoins.
Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.
Hey everybody, I'm Tim.
And I'm Dean.
And we're the hosts of Talking Back. We're a retro-based podcast covering movies, comics, video games, and more.
Check us out every Monday where we hit the rewind button and dig into some of our favorite content from the past. We like to keep things fun, lighthearted, and informative.
Do you feel like you need more nostalgia in your life? Then check out Talking Back. We're available everywhere podcasts are found.